Why do I always start without the microphone on? Why is that one thing I can't get into my brain? Switch on the I plug it in over there and unplug it every night because the old power. Right, hello, chuffy, you chuffingtons. Right, hello, chuffy, you chuffingtons. That's me, I'm rolling. Checky check, chuffy 1 2. A little bit late today because my sister came round unannounced, so just, you know, talking to my sister and my mum, just having a chat. A little bit late. We are talking Tartaria today, though. 2 p.m. GMT is my YouTube streaming time at the moment. Talking Tartaria today. We're talking all manner of conspiracy theory and stuff like that. I'll let the room fill up a little bit. Tell you what we're doing. We're going to be looking at Michelle Gibson. She's been referred to me. Michelle Gibson. Here she is. Her what would you call it? Her avatar, her thumbnail picture or whatever you call it, you know, her image there is a series of circles, interlacing circles that make up what we call the Metatron. Metatron is a figure from the Bible. Thank you very much. Even though it says it's not a figure of the Hebrew Bible, it was originally in the Bible. You know, it's one of those things they put in, took out, not really sure if they like it. It's the creator angel, or the name of the creative aspect of the Godhead. So that's Metatron's cube there. Metatron's cube is circles, lines, a bit of symmetry, geometry, and it creates all the other shapes. So if you meditate on that and you just gently sit and look at it, you start to see all these other shapes appearing from the interlacing lines. It's a feature of geometry, really. A feature of geometry, referred to as archangel, Metatron sometimes, but really it's just a feature of geometry. You know, it's not anything to get het up about. It's just a feature of geometry, one that occurs quite a lot through religious symbolism because of this link to the pre-Christian Bible, biblical times. That's Metatron. Some people believe that sort of stuff, some people don't. Metatron appears in the Quran as well. So that's what she's chosen for her image of herself. And that's not obviously a photograph of her face, is it? So she's not revealing what has been hidden in plain sight, it says at the top there on her headline banner. But she's not revealing anything. She won't even reveal her face. In fact, she's hiding her own face. So it's a bit weird, isn't it? A bit weird to come out with the concept that you're revealing what's been hidden whilst you're hiding. I find that to be really weird. I'd have thought you'd have been wanting to be really out there and open and honest with yourself, but no, you're hiding. So you're hiding in plain sight as well. Strange use of capitalisation on the header there. Revealing what has been hidden in plain sight. We're going to look at some of her work. She's done a lot of videos. Is that her face there? Maybe that's her. Oh no, that's Wendy Skies. So she has other people's faces on. She's happy to broadcast other people's faces, but not her own. There's lots of this, look. There's fucking loads of it. And it's all very similar and quite dry on her channel, quite dry. But what I will do is I'll go for the sort by most popular. And this top one, what on earth was going on in the 1800s? Question mark, exclamation marks. We'll have a look into this.
Is HelloFresh worth the price?
Oh, you chuffers. No, it's not worth the price. Grow your own vegetables at home, you chuffer. What's wrong with you? Is HelloFresh worth the price? So we're going to have a look at her video. We've got that to look at. We've also got a bit of Martin Liedtke, a bit of my old favourite chum, me big boss, Martin Liedtke. He's been busy. Hello, Uncontrolled Historian. Your old avatar was you kissing a dolphin. You were told about weird sex dolphins by a commenter. I need to change mine to my own face because I think it's better to have your own face personally. I'm not a big advocate of like hiding behind the internet necessarily. Like I'm talking when we're broadcasters, you know, I'm talking about people who make content. So, you know, I think it's okay to stand by your content. I've been putting my avatar as a little mushroom with the grass on its head since probably about, I don't know, some years now. This channel was originally just my gamer tag channel, and I uploaded some Mario Maker stuff to the internet. So it's one of them. You know, I hadn't thought carefully about my brand. In fact, I did think carefully about my brand the other day and considered changing my name to Scuffles. I think we might have the podcast called Scuffles. Anyway, look, Martin's been back on it. And he's been doing some shorts. He thinks shorts are the way forward because you get more views on shorts comparatively to videos. But his shorts aren't doing that well, really. You know, you need at least over the 2K to be popular on at least easy. So that one worked a bit, but not lots. He's probably happy with the views, but he's doing comedy. And just like notifying us of stuff that's going on in shorts. So it's a different attitude to his production there. Bit of different. And he's got a couple of new ones. Free Energy is one I wanted to look at. And this, we did Dark Archery before. It's hard to look at them though because they're over 2 hours long. So I'll be looking at some Martin today. And I'm also quite happy to field your suggestions and questions. I'm just a bit unhappy about the way your chat is being seen on the screen. Let me just affect that. Because I want you to be able to be read. That's a bit better, I think. Hello, Darren. You're a new chatter, I think. It's flat, and that's flat. Maybe. The Earth, you mean? I assume. I mean, I don't. I'm pretty sure I can see out my window that it's not flat. So there is that. I mean, even if you think it is like a plate shape, you know, even if you think it's like a plate shape, you can see it's not flat out your window, can't you? Because you can see it going up and down. Like when you go driving around, you have to drive up the hills and down the hills. So that's up and down. That's not flat. It's not level, it's not flat. Absolutely, definitely that. I mean, it might be that it's dish-shaped, or it's this shaped, or it's that shaped, but we know that the Earth is not flat. Like, that's just a term we use to describe a shape, isn't it? And it's an incorrect term in the first place. Like, if I was to describe the Earth as, like, disc-shaped, maybe I could call it, like, I mean, what would you call a disc? A disc, maybe. Is there a proper word for it? Disc-shaped. Because, like, ovoid means egg-shaped. You know, you'd have a word for it, wouldn't you? Disc-shaped, adjective. You know, I think you'd call it a disc, wouldn't you? Discoid. Discoidal. I've got Discord these days. Discoidal, that's the word. You'd say it was discoidal, probably. Than flat. Because flat doesn't mean what you think it means, does it? Like, they go on, this is funny as well, because they go on about these words, like, oh, I think chuffing founded means I found it, and like they do all this funny stuff with words, but discoidal would be the word you want to use for a flat Earth, because a flat, literally flat, like, you know, flattened out. No, definitely not that. We know that because you've seen the mountains, you've seen the depth of the seas. You know, there's quite a difference between ground level in places. So even if you think the Earth is discoidally shaped, you know it's not flat, and you know that would be a strange word to use to describe it. It'd be the wrong word to use to describe it. So we know now, just from what, you know, just basically from what one comment said, that people are getting the wrong idea. Even if the word is discoidal, people are giving you the wrong idea with the wrong words, describing the wrong phenomena. So if you believe in a discoidal shaped world, then fair enough, I suppose. Well, it's not, it's a bit silly, but it's not flat, even if it's discoidal. Uncontrolled Historian here saying, word up, you're not a fan of Mr. L experiencing the first hand. Martin's Liedtke. Martin's saving mankind from a humanitarian disaster. Oh yeah, like, Martin was stuck at a bus stop and suddenly things matter to him. We'll watch these first then, since this one's first.
Guys, I'm in the middle of England.
Middle of England. He was going to say Birmingham, I think.
I'm trying to travel home, and basically I'm in the midst of a potential...
Look, dirty-faced, shirtless.
...humanitarian crisis.
Potential humanitarian crisis. Now, we gave some money to UNICEF yesterday because there's a humanitarian crisis happening in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. We gave some money to UNICEF because there's humanitarian crises happening around the world. Global hunger, you know, problems with kids not getting the medications they need. You know, there's serious problems with the world. There are real humanitarian crises. And I find it a little bit distasteful to refer to you waiting at a bus stop in the hot as a humanitarian crisis. You know, I think it's a little bit distasteful, but, you know, I'm not going to give him a kicking over that. It's just, using words, isn't it? But it's interesting, isn't it, that Martin again uses the wrong words, incorrect descriptions. Now, it wouldn't matter if it was just somebody on the internet having a bit of a laugh, but Martin's a thought leader amongst a community that think very carefully about the words they use, and they think very carefully about the context. So for him just to use the definitely wrong words, a bit confusing.
Stop, they just dumped 300 plus people. And
Martin's in a car park waiting for a train because the trains aren't running, and you've got to be a fucking idiot. I'll tell you this. You've got to have a really important reason to travel, or you've got to be a fucking idiot to be there, because they did tell you the trains wouldn't be running because of the heat, and they did tell you not to travel on trains. I'll just tell you this. Don't travel by rail, heatwave, UK. Rail passengers urged to avoid train travel. Urged to avoid it. Urged to avoid it. I urge you to join in with things like The Guardian, independent journalism, left-wing politics, because I think that's how you actually change the world. I don't think that, you know, moaning on about a load of mumbo-jumbo on the internet changes your day-to-day life. And we can perceive that because Martin has not improved his day-to-day life. He's waiting for a bus with the people at the train with all the idiots. He's not living the best life here. You know, Martin has not used this super information, this flat earth information, to improve his life in any way. In fact, knowing whether the earth is round, a sphere, a pyramid, a discoid, or whatever, it doesn't matter a shit, does it? Because you've still got to get the train, you've still got to pay for your shopping, you've still got to go to Tesco, you've still got to find your rent money. So I think it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't serve you from day to day. Hello, Darren. If only you knew what you live in, not on. Do you think it's this shell thing? Yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know if you know that, because I don't think you've been up there to see it, because you haven't been up there to see it. So I don't know if you know that. You assert it as conjecture. You haven't actually asserted it as conjecture in the chat, I'm assuming, so I wouldn't. It's unfair for me to put words in your mouth. But yeah, so what I would say to you is it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter if the earth is round, flat, fucking long and thin, or sharp and pointy like this screwdriver. It doesn't matter if we all live on this bit or off on the tip there. Tomorrow, I've got to go and buy my shopping. It's not going to get any cheaper because the earth is shaped differently, and I can go in the supermarket and tell them that the earth is flat. It doesn't matter. That's why it's not served Martin any well. It's not served him in any way. He's waiting for the bus like an idiot, because rail passengers were urged to avoid train travel. So if you're waiting for the bus and you're complaining, that's on you. That's not a humanitarian crisis that the rail department failed you. That's your fault for turning up there when they told you not to come here.
we've all been waiting on boiling hot trains, waiting for coaches that are not turning up. People...
Now, if you've got a relative in hospital or something like that, you know, you might have an urgent reason to travel, but any other reason, non-urgent, you shouldn't be doing it. You're causing trouble.
Really...
Because some people are waiting for the bus and the train because they've got urgent reasons to travel, a relative dying in hospital. Others are just jollying it around and taking up the space when there isn't that much space available because of the heat wave.
Aerated. I'm looking after an old lady who's just behind me, or poorly.
Darren says, because we can't see it or feel it. Yeah, you have seen it. Fair enough. We'll come to how you've seen it in a little bit. Uncontrolled story. You know, I'll give you the benefit of, you know, dealing with you in chat, but I'm going to go through these videos a little bit first. My postie Dave hasn't come today because of a heat wave. You're waiting for a parcel. Yeah. Can 1,000 angels fit on the top of a pin? I don't know, because the pin doesn't have any definition of size. You know, how big's your pin? I do know that the description of angels in different religious texts vary, and that it is there's more of a consensus around angels being vast and giant, like bigger than mountains, than there is than being very small. So I don't know. And pins, you know, you get pins in your knee that are one shape, and you get pins in your dress that are another. So I don't know.
Say hello, Pauline, lovely. Say hello.
Hello,
Say
hello, random member of the public.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Oh, hello. Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Who's that?
That's my
She seems a bit confused.
friends.
This confused old woman seems a bit confused. That's the sort of person you want, isn't it, Martin, to sign up to your system?
I'm a brethren who's keeping me company now.
And then there's the two of you with your shirts off, looking like unkempt. Unkempt is the word. And it's okay, it's really hot, I guess, you know, take your shirt off, but I don't see everyone else with their shirts off. So there is a social consensus sometimes on public transport that you should be clothed.
Yeah? So we're sorting this out.
because other people might sit in the seats after you and you'll have swept them up.
Humanitarian sort of thing. So,
Humanitarian. Other people just seem to be walking around, they seem fine.
so yeah, have a look at this, guys. And when a coach does turn up, they're like, you know, rats from a sinking ship. This is very like feeling like the Titanic, right?
Very like the Titanic, except you're not on board the transport, you're waiting to board the transport. So if it was like the Titanic, it's like that bit at the start of the film where before they get on the boat. Martin's really confused, isn't he? He's confused.
No, isn't it? Yeah?
Going down with the ship, mate.
Yeah, so I'm stuck, can't get into Birmingham.
Oh, he's trying to get into Birmingham. Well, that was a foolish thing to do on the day that rail passengers were urged to avoid heat travel in extreme UK heatwave. It's like you don't understand the world properly, isn't it? It's like you're making mistakes that cause you to suffer in your own life because you don't understand the world properly. That's what that feels like to me.
So down, can't get to Wales, I'm stuck in butt-fuck nowhere. Oi oi, bit of carnage, guys.
Use of the language there out in public where people's kids are around.
I'm in the middle of England.
In chat here we're saying about the medallions, that I think that's a silver, and I don't know if it has any particular context for Martin because he believes a lot of strange stuff, so it could be that it's warding off evil spirits, or it could just be, you know, an ascetic thing, but I'm not going to really critique people on their aesthetics myself personally on the internet, other than what I think is a bit generally socially acceptable and a bit generally not. I myself am a punk, and I kind of think, you know, live and let live in a lot of ways, and I find it hard to be a bully online. I'm trying not to be a bully online, but we have to deal with this stuff, and I think in this context it is okay to sort of say, you know, why are you dressed like that at the bus stop because nobody else is. It kind of makes you stand out as being a bit different, and the way it makes you stand out makes you look, I'll be fair, like a bit of a tramp, doesn't it? It makes you look like a bit of a tramp.
I'm trying to travel home, and basically I'm in the midst of a potential humanitarian crisis.
Like, he's joking about a potential humanitarian crisis because, of course, it's not a humanitarian crisis being a bit hot and waiting for the bus. We've had real humanitarian crises, so you wouldn't joke about that sort of stuff if you really cared about it, and you might try and do something to fix the humanitarian crisis in the world. For us on this stream, check what we did yesterday. We gave some money to UNICEF. You gave it by helping out in chat, so I'm pretty confident we can say that we're on the right side of that sort of thing.
The trains have stopped, they've just dumped 300 plus people. And we've all been waiting on boiling hot trains, waiting for coaches that are not turning up. People are getting really irritated. I'm looking after an old lady who's just behind me, or Pauline. Say hello, Pauline.
Oh, this is a loop now, so we've seen that. So there's this humanitarian crisis. It's not a humanitarian crisis. It's just that he's waiting for the bus. And why is he waiting for the bus or the train? Because he's a fucking idiot that shouldn't have got the bus or the train in the UK. I've repeated that now. So that sets a good baseline, you know, about what's going on in the man's head. Not sense, not good choices, bad decisions. Mine, Liedtke. I'd love to get him on the show. We're going to build up to the point quite soon. New camera and guest slot. Love to get him on the show. He talked for a second and left, yeah, looking after. He likes to bring people in, doesn't he, to, you know, show the world. But yeah, so that was interesting there. I put giants on the list. Look, I put giants on the list. We said Michelle Gibson on the list. Let's have a look at what Michelle Gibson's got going on. Let's have a look at what she thinks, because this one I did think, what the fuck. It's all right, you know, you can talk in chat. You don't have to shut up. No, it's fine. Talk in chat, please do. You know, we're going to have a quick look at these. Then I'm going to ask you for anything that you want to throw my way. Darren might be suggesting some things. Darren's probably, if I were you, I'd be gathering up the, you know, the links right now so that I can have a quick look, because Darren says that I can see something. Look, here's Michelle Gibson at the start of her episode. What on earth is going on in the 800? She's using this interlocking circles, the tetragrammaton, you know, this concept. It's something that also comes, it's a geometric thing, geometric phenomenon, effect of interlocking circles, but it also comes up in the tetragrammaton, and it also comes up in some ideas of what they call something sacred geometry, which is a bit of a funny idea in itself, that circles equal making things. But right, Ma, sacred geometry, that's the Metatron. I already explained it to you at the start of the episode.
in my videos an explanation for what happened to the positive timeline of humanity.
God, I've never met Michelle before, never looked at her videos yet, but her voice sounds just like No Place Like Home. She reminds me of one of those sort of, I think she's overweight, American, and confused.
And associated historical events and anomalies. And my take on the mud flood and historical reset timeline. I shared things like an extremely cold weather event in the historical record in Ireland between 1740 and 1741.
Don't know what she's really going on about. She's just thrown like several different ideas in here. And then we've got a picture of Africa, and we've got the names of the countries that owned those areas of Africa in the past. There's nothing really of any context
as
here.
well as my thoughts about how an artificial time loop could have been created between 1492 and 1942.
An artificial time loop could have been created. All right, I'm glad that we got that sorted then.
With 1717 as the midpoint year between the two. I decided to pull together in this video what I have found that was taking place during the 1800s in the course of my research, starting at the tail end of the 1700s and through to the early 1900s. As there are overlapping events happening on either side of the 19th century.
I don't know about the tetramorph specifically, but I do know that the idea of the tetragrammaton was put in the Old Testament. Like, it's a long old idea, so I don't know if it would pertain to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Tetramorph is a representation of 4 attributes of evangelists in a winged figure with the wings covered the eyes. It's a symbolic arrangement of 4 different elements. Archaeological evidence showing early civilizations divided the 4 chords of the horizon. Christian art, it's a union of symbols of 4 evangelists. So yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, you'd say, yeah. The word comes from the Greek 4 forms or shapes. Each symbol may be described as a tetramorph. They were common in medieval art and remain common today. So it's symbolism. It's been going for a long time. Doesn't really, I can't see one specific thing that is the tetramorph. I can see lots of different ideas representing different kinds of tetramorphs. And I think if I drew a picture of like a tetramorph of my different meals that I eat, like my dinner, my lunch, my breakfast and supper, I could probably do a tetramorph of that as well, I think. It is a thing though. Hello, Riam Riam.
My name is Michelle Gibson.
Michelle Gibson's got just like Trust and Truth. Sorry, not just like which we'll look at in a minute. No Place Like Home. She's gone and got herself one of those clip art combo intro animations. Like, why? They think that looks professional, I think, like she's like running a law office, but actually that looks less professional. You've got the blue and the yellow, so that's your colour scheme, but you've also got the green and the red here, so that's not your colour scheme, and you've got leaves just on the side, just cut out and stuck on over the top of a picture of a castle with crenellations and turrets and some sort of simplification of that image in thick bold lines. It looks like you've nicked some clip art and put it together, and that MG looks like you might be running a, I don't know, like a lawyer's or a motor company. And then Michelle Gibson in one font, the MG in a different font, the website in a different font. Like, it's fucking awful graphical, like, it's awful. Tarot World card shows the tetramorph. Interesting, because tarot cards, we know that tarot cards come from a 15th century, they're just a 15th century card game. There's nothing, it was a pack of playing cards, like for playing games. Trick-taking game, like whist. It started in Bologna. It was a Italian pack of cards that they used to play games with. Like, all the rules are here, they've been doing it for years, they know how it started, they've got descriptions and historical records of the original cards. And then what happened is those cards came over from Italy to the rest of the world. You know, they spread out, they were used more, they travelled. They had a French tarot, an Austrian one. You know, lots of different versions of the same sort of game. And then later on in the 18th century, so we're talking about Victorian times, Edwardian times, later on, people started to use them as part of their occult witchy magic, because at that time, occult witchy magic was quite trendy. and people had forgotten about the tarot cards, and they sort of came back into public consumption. So there's nothing magical or occult or anything about them, as much as there's something magical and occult with the Ace of Spades, the Five of Clubs. You know, that's the same thing. The Ace of Spades, the Five of Clubs, that's the same thing. It's just they've got different pictures on the tarot cards. They're just bits of card, and they're just like, you tracked it to 12th stance to Constantinople, okay, but it doesn't say that here. That's not what it says, like the common consensus here. Although playing cards can go back to 1367. So maybe playing cards. I mean, the tarot, the Mamluk tarot, okay. The Mamluk tarot. It says Mamluk playing cards. Again, like the Arabic, the mother of tarot here. So we're talking about Arabic. I was going to say the Arabic traditions go back a lot longer. Because like the original chess, Arabic chess, like the Arabic chess was with different images and size shapes. Arabian. There's just lots of products. The problem is there's lots of products on this internet, which is fucking annoying. But you know, they created chess way back. It was getting its Shatranj. It's a different game, sort of, but you know, it's invented by the Arab and then brought over, sort of thing. You know, like these things come out because they had a longer history with more maths involved. The Lewis Chessmen, yeah, I've heard of them. So we're saying yes, there was like this granddaddy of European playing cards. Look, the Mamluk deck, yes. In 1931, he discovered it in Istanbul, this deck of cards. We've reconstructed it in modern times. 48 cards. There's nothing here to suggest, though, that it might be a cult. And like, why would it be a cult? If you get a bit of card and you start drawing pictures on it, and then you do 5 of them, then you do 10 of them, then you got 50 of them, why is that magic? Why on earth would that be magic? It wouldn't make any sense for it to have any occult significance. In fact, ghosts and spirits and gods and the occult, they're far from bits of card and paint, aren't they? They're far from it. Far from it. It's totally different. So we've got an early Saracen deck here. So yeah, you're right. It does go a bit further back than I said, 1500s. 1500s would have been popularised, you know, use. But it probably does go back a little bit more. The playing of cards with a deck of cards like this. And again, look, I tell you what you're saying, but also you go back on it, it's Arabic, and it doesn't feature those same symbologies that we're used to. You know, it's not like a death card and a this card and a that card. It's much more like, these are much more like early playing cards because they're much more consistent. You've got the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, you know, much more consistent. So it's interesting. No, it's not a cult. There you go then. It's not a cult. Uncontrolled Historian says. Historians saying you can go back really far and discover a lot about these cards, and at no point does the occult come up in it. It's only in the really recent history when occult was like a trend, because you know we have trends on the internet. Well, before you had trends on the internet, you had trends in society, but there was no internet. Victorian. And I hope anyone who's listening takes this on board, because it's good for your mental health. Remember this. If these funny ideas get in your head, they don't serve you, they don't help you, but they confuse you. And what happens when you're confused? You make bad choices. So it's not good for you. Knowing whether this and that is this and that, or even spending lots of time thinking about whether this and that is this and that, I don't know if it's good for you. I don't know how good for you it is. But we know that, I mean, I'm pressing occult. Victorian trends, there's going to be a million. It's more fashion, isn't it? But Victorian occult trends. There will be a lot about occult things in Victorian times, because it was the right. It was like, it was a trending. Here's the evolution of occult spirituality in Victorian times, magical revival, occultism, and the culture of regeneration in Victorian times. So there was certainly, you know, this cultural trend towards trying to speak to the dead in Victorian times, and that's when the occult interest in the tarot cards sprung back up. So we're happy to say that tarot cards are not magic. We're all happy to say that. We're happy to say Martin shouldn't have been at the railway station. We can get rid of that. We're happy to say we promote UNICEF. We can get rid of that. I've got Martin's page, and we're back to what on earth was going on. There's something quite interesting that I want to bring up here that she's going to bring up. So,
Providing the following
Giants.
recap for those who may be new to my work. This information will be familiar to those who have been following it. First, on the extreme cold weather in Ireland. Irish historian David Dixon talks about this little-known event in his book Arctic Ireland.
this has come up a number of times in their Tartaria videos, so I will have to do a deeper look, a deeper dive into Arctic Ireland. But I would suggest as well, I would also suggest that if you look on Google Maps, so I live in the middle of the UK, Ireland's just there. Yeah, see where Ireland is there? Just there. So it's pretty close to the United Kingdom. And you would think that if Ireland was covered in ice, if it was cold enough to cover Ireland in ice, then the rest of the United Kingdom, the Glasgow here, Wales here, like you'd think there'd be enough close populations to have more record of it. So hopefully there'll be more information. She's suggesting a Great Frost Sticks in this book. We can look into it in the future, but I'm not really ready for that yet. I'm not really, I haven't been thinking about it yet. I'm thinking about giants at the moment.
I have explored the idea that this event was related to the hijack of the original timeline. The Irish population endured 21 months of bizarre weather without known precedent that defied conventional explanation.
Uncontrolled Historian says they dislike the giant theory. What about the rest of you? Darren, are you interested in giants? Because we're going to come back to Darren. Hopefully you'll still be there when we talk about this firmament. But the giants...
The cause is not known. Shortly after I learned about the cold weather event in Ireland, I was connected by someone to the mud flood community. I learned about the fantastic research that is being done by people looking...
This is brilliant. You've got a photograph, a badly taken photo. It's badly pixelated. I don't know what it means. It might be someone built a roof around the side of a house.
Looking at their own communities and other places around the world.
Like my dad used to run a roofing company, and he built this roof at ground level. Just like that, he built a roof at ground level, and it was to train the lads to work on the roofs at ground level. So that might be what that is.
As strong evidence, there was a cataclysmic event involving a massive flood of mud within the last couple of 100 years.
She asserts the strong evidence. There is no strong evidence.
It is being called...
We've seen this photograph before. This is a picture of a city where they're digging out the roads to relay the roads, maybe put in some infrastructure like tram lines, railway tracks. It's probably railway tracks, or they could be digging out sewers. And we've been through this photograph on a previous episode. Refer to my Tartaria... what do you call it? I've got a Tartaria playlist on this channel. Refer to that. We've covered this. Don't be a fucking idiot.
Called a reset event, and photographic evidence exists that buildings, canals, rail lines, tunnels, among other things, were purposefully dug out after the event.
Don't be stupid. They're not purposely dug out. There's no railway lines there. In order to lay the railway lines, you have to dig out the foundations, lay the stones, and then put the tracks down. Don't be silly.
To the point where they could be used. Over the years, I have filled my head with information about megaliths.
Over the years, I have filled my head with information about megaliths.
Long before I became aware of the information I am sharing,
Long before she became aware of this information.
I learned about such places as the Sphinx in Egypt having been dug out.
I mean, what? Megaliths, the Sphinx is dug out. I mean, we're just... Darren says there were giants. Okay, we'll come to giants in a minute. Because this is what today's supposed to be about, really. Her conjecture about giants, but... we'll do a bit of a variety as well.
As well as the famous heads of Easter Island.
We've covered some of that in previous episodes, so I'm not going to go over these heads
that were
too
found
much.
to have bodies too.
Yep.
The explanation of a mud flood makes a lot of sense to me.
This photograph makes me laugh because what are we supposed to be seeing? What we are seeing is two, I think they're moors. And I can't really be sure because there's no you know, nothing really to give us much context in the photograph. But what quite often happens is you might get like, you know, in America you have these side shows, these travelling shows, and you might get like someone really tall. They might even paint them up to look different, and then stand them next to someone who's quite short to make them look taller. That might be what's happening there. I've got no way of knowing how tall this man in the middle is, but what I can see is that his hat looks quite a big hat. Like his hat, look at his hat, right? It looks quite big compared to his head, doesn't it? Looks quite big compared to his head. It's possible these two gentlemen next to him are normal sized and that he's quite small. We can never find out through this picture. We can never know. We don't even know where it's from.
Based on what I am finding and seeing. A sudden cataclysmic liquefaction event creating a flood of mud
The cataclysmic liquefaction of mud is silly, but yeah.
accounts for how a highly advanced worldwide civilization of giants
That's a photograph of a stone foot.
could have been wiped from the face of the earth.
The giants were wiped from the face of the earth now. So now we're saying there was a race of giants and they were wiped from the face of the earth.
And erased from our collective memory.
And erased from our collective memory. But they left the giant stone foot there. So they didn't completely erase it. But they didn't... That's not a real foot. So maybe they didn't want to erase it because it's obviously not a real foot.
I have speculated.
Right, so... I'm just going to come to these giants for you. I want to really clear this up. There were giants and other animals and giant trees. Yeah, look, in prehistoric times there were dinosaurs and they were big. Prehistoric insects. Look at this. This would be insane. Prehistoric insects and the size of them. Look at the size of that insect. What is going on? Giants. Well, really big ones. And what was going on is back then there was more oxygen in the atmosphere. So the way insects breathe is they... Mega dragonfly. The way this animal breathes is it's got little holes going into its carpus. How dragonfly breathes. Through spiracles, holes in the abdomen. During their earlier larval stage, they live in water and breathe through gills. During growth stages, they have big appetites, whatever. They breathe oxygen, look. Through spiracles, holes that allow oxygen to move into their cells. So I wanted to find a close-up one, but it might make people feel a bit grotty. Dragonfly... spiracles. So they've got these little holes that, like, they're pretty close up, but they're basically little holes, like, in the side of their bodies. They allow the oxygen in and out, yeah? What happened back in prehistoric times, there was a lot more oxygen, so they could grow bigger. They couldn't grow any bigger now because they haven't got as much oxygen in the atmosphere, and what that means is that as they got bigger, those holes would get bigger, but the size of the oxygen molecule will not get bigger. There's an exponential change, either bigger and smaller in surface area as you get bigger and smaller. Like, you don't increase the surface area by the same amount as you increase the rate of the size. So they can't get enough oxygen with either, like, their size, they grow to the size that is the right size for the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. They got smaller over the years because the oxygen levels went down and they couldn't survive with those big holes, not getting enough oxygen in there. There's not enough oxygen for these big holes. They make the holes smaller. They themselves are smaller. So there's this physical property, right? Hello, Rudy, there's a physical... I'm just going to deal with this one thing first, okay? There's a physical property that doesn't allow them to get any bigger, and that's the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. It's a physical limitation, yeah? Like, back then they were huge, right now they're not. And you still get big bugs today. There are still, you know, outliers. But back then they were huge, right now they're not. They've changed size because of the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. Physical limitation. In the same way, it's not possible for a human, or as we'll see here in this little video from the BBC, it's not really possible for a human to get that big. And there are reasons. It's physical limitations.
To see why, we need to visit a man in Turkey. This is Sultan Kozan, Sultan has an oversized pituitary gland, which has produced too much human growth hormone throughout his life, allowing him to reach the height of 2.51 metres.
So this is an oversized human. He's not oversized in every aspect, is he? He's just like overgrown in different aspects.
He's the world's tallest man. Sounds cool, but it has some serious drawbacks.
Let's put it.
His body struggles to cope. Extra tall means extra heavy, and to make matters worse, taller people fall over more often, and when they fall further and hit the ground harder. So Sultan keeps breaking his legs.
So first off, just by nature of being that height, and he's not a giant like we're saying these giants are, but he is big, right? First off, he keeps breaking his legs, like literally keeps breaking his legs because of physics. He falls further than we do, and when he falls harder. He builds up higher terminal velocity, he's heavier, he falls harder. It's a problem.
And there are more health issues besides. Being tall puts pressure on the heart, which has to pump blood higher.
Being tall puts pressure on the heart, which has to pump blood higher. Now this is the same as I was just saying about those holes in the insects. Suddenly your veins go from being a certain diameter and they get bigger, don't they? They get bigger, big wide veins. You'd need that because you're a giant. You're going to be pumping more blood around. More blood, like fuckloads more blood. Like when you increase the volume of an object, the amount of stuff you can fit in it, the volume increases, doesn't it? And that pressure of blood, the blood pressure, is a system that we have that is well balanced for our physical body, our size. If you start to increase the size of the body, there's problems with the blood pressure because the size of the veins, the size of the heart, the thickness of the blood, all standard stuff that if you make us too big, it can't work. It just physically can't work.
So at 2.5 metres, it seems that Sultan has already reached the limit of
So he's reached the limit.
human size. But I know what you're thinking. What about Gigantopithecus? For those of you who haven't studied the evolutionary history of primates, here's the quick version. There were some teeth that were found in a Hong Kong pharmacy that people thought were dragon's teeth, but a paleontologist saw them and realised they weren't from a dragon but from a massive ape, which weighed half a ton and was the biggest ape that ever lived.
So there's been a giant ape in the past.
So how
Darren's
did
off now. So you dropped a lot of different stuff in this here, Darren, but sorry you got to leave now, but this is the evidence that proves that we can't have giant people. So at least one thing that you've brought up in chat will be, hopefully, in your mind, settled now. Because there's really clear, and you can go and test this. You can get some pipes, you can get some tubes, some water, some thick water, some blood. Bloody hell! I'm vegan. I wouldn't go messing with pig's blood, but you could even like mix something into the water to make it thick enough like blood, and you could try pumping it through different pipe sizes. You could find out what size of heart you'd need. You could work out blood pressures and bone densities. And you could work out if it's possible, and you'd find out no.
Gigantopithecus get so big?
But the simple conjecture of, we saw something big, there was a big doorway, there's a big foot, I've seen a big thing, maybe we had giants. Like, Michelle Gibson hasn't talked about this physics, this biology. Why hasn't she gone into any of the factual evidence that would be... You don't even have to prove there were giants. You could just prove they could exist through the factual, say, look, this is the size of the heart, this would be the size of the footprints, this would be the... and this is what they would be like. No, she hasn't done that. Has she? Why hasn't she done that? Why hasn't she like got into any of this?
The biggest ape that ever lived. So how did Gigantopithecus get so big? Many think as it got bigger, it had to go back to all fours to cope. Is this the secret? Is this what we'd have to do to reach truly giant proportions?
Would we have to walk on all fours?
Well, not if you want scientists to call you human.
If it's going to be a giant human...
Now this is important. If it's going to be a giant human, we could maybe get a different species... because we could maybe adapt so many of the physiological aspects that they're no longer human, yeah. Well, that's like saying a whale is bigger than me. A whale is bigger than me. A whale is a giant. That's like saying, like, you know, an elephant is bigger than me. Yes, an elephant is bigger than me. An elephant is a giant. It's got different physiology.
It has to be bipedal, because bipedalism is the thing, the one major thing that sets our genus or our group, the hominins, off from all of the other primates.
So
the
we're saying,
bottom line is if it's not on two legs, it's just not human.
we're saying in this video, if it's not on two legs, it's just not human. But this really plays into the whole Tartaria idea, because you have to accept that they bring this in to say, right, humans were giant, we had big buildings, we had giant, it was like a race of giant humans. So they weren't going around on 4 legs being animals. They were like, they're saying they have to, we're saying it has to be bipedal to qualify as human. She's saying it has to be bipedal because it was. We've got evidence. These are giant people. So this is like, you know, it don't make sense. Michelle's conjecture doesn't make sense.
So to make a bipedal human giant, we're going to have to redesign the human body so we can stand upright without breaking our legs all the time.
So first of all, we've got to have these massive legs so we can stand up without breaking our legs. So that would be... I mean, the idea would be that we've evolved differently then. There's like a different race that evolved, or maybe they came from space, or I don't know. But they've got to have... This is what we've got to find. We've got to find this first. Massive, thick legs that we can stand on without breaking our legs.
We'd need...
So when we're looking at the evidences here, they can't be that. First off, they can't be that. This is a funny picture to use because they don't have the big thick legs that you'd need for a start. Do they? This stone foot that we saw. Michelle, where's your stone foot? It's just here, isn't it? Your stone foot. There. That stone foot's too small. Like, that's just like a big... Like, that's like you're scaling up a human 1-to-1. That wouldn't work. It'd have to... The foot would have to get exponentially bigger as a base. So, yeah.
Much thicker legs and stronger bones to support our weight. Ears like an elephant to regulate heat.
So we'd need to regulate heat. That's another aspect I didn't bring up. We'd need to regulate heat. So you'd need bigger ears because you need more surface area of your skin to regulate the heat. Because as you get physically bigger, like, the surface area of your skin doesn't increase with the same rate as the volume of your blood. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you increase the size of a bucket, the amount of water you can get in the bucket increases by a certain rate, but the size, the diameter of the bucket doesn't increase by the same rate. It's just basic geometry. And when we're talking about basic geometry, it's a surprise that Michelle Gibson, who uses that image of geometry at the start of her... Like, she's all about the geometry, isn't she? Well, she doesn't understand shapes. She doesn't understand geometry. So we've got that. We're looking for something with giant legs, like thick, not just a giant itself, but comparative to its giant body, huge thick legs, like an elephant, great big ears, like an elephant,
Stronger heart.
and a stronger heart. It would need this. Your human heart, scaled up, would not do the job. It would try and pump the blood, and the blood wouldn't pump. So a human giant, we've just seen in this video, a real human giant, has physiological problems. Like Andre the Giant, the wrestler, he had physiological problems. They all have problems. They get to a certain age and it starts to really kick in. So heart problems are one of these problems.
Pump the blood the extra distance to our brain.
The blood's got to go extra distance in wider veins. He didn't mention the width of the veins, but that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Pressure is a feature of the size of the vessel it's flowing through, and you reduce the pressure by increasing the size of the vessels. So now you have to increase the pressure to get the blood to the brain, or you'd have to have a fucking giant massive pump of a heart.
So giant humans are possible then? Well, here's the rub. To be giants, we'd have to adapt our physiology so radically that we really couldn't be considered human anymore.
So what he's saying there, and what's quite important, is to be this giant, we'd have to adapt so much, and they've just suggested those adaptations, but they haven't covered the whole gamut of adaptations. Comparatively, your brain would be a lot smaller, wouldn't it? Comparatively, your brain would be a lot smaller. So would that help, or would it be, you know, compared to the size of your body, would that be an issue? You know, our noses, you know, your noses, you know how they protect you from germs and dust and stuff, because the little hairs act as a filter, and then the air goes in, and, like, you know, you filter stuff, and you pick it out your nose like a boogie. You know that? That wouldn't happen for this giant, because a fly, like a little fly, could fly straight into his airway. Like, there would be no filter system like our filter system. It would be a wider hole. So a fly could just go straight into his lungs. So that's a bad problem. We'd have to redesign the nasal system. We'd have to redesign some sort of filtering system for our airways. Do you know, there's so many other things that knock on. So I think this makes sense. You can only have giants if they are giants. Like, if they're not humans at all, if they're not a human-like race, if they're not being pumped with a heart, brains, nasal system, skin, like, if it's not that, it's got to be something else, or it's got to be so different that we wouldn't call it a giant anymore. You'd probably just call it an elephant. It would look so different. It would have a different name and species type.
We really couldn't be considered human anymore. Which brings us back to where we started. We humans are about as big as we're going to get.
There you go. We're as big as we're going to get. Based on the physics of our world. Now, I'll tell you something. Take us to Mars, reduce that gravity, maybe you can get bigger. I don't know. Maybe that's possible. But certainly, we've never had an evolved race of giants in our world. They would have to come from outside of ours. Like, you could bring them in as aliens. You can't evolve that. I'll tell you for why as well. The evolutionary pressures, when you get these giant men, like Andre the Giant, like Chappie that we just saw here, breaking his legs. Where's his broken legs?
Sultan has an oversized...
Poor Sultan with his broken legs.
When they fall further and hit the ground harder.
So, evolutionary pressure, you know, you wouldn't have been able to fix your legs, so you'd have died. Like, you wouldn't be able to have this evolutionary pressure. The Nephilim, lovely, yeah. The Nephilim we know came from Enoch. Lovely brother Enoch. I do repeat myself sometimes, but the first part of the Book of Enoch describes the fall of the Watchers, the angels who fathered the angel-human hybrids called Nephilim. Angels came down from heaven, fell from heaven, you know, were considered to be naughty, and they had sex with people, and those people became this giant race of people called the Nephilim, according to Enoch, who was a prophet, one of the original biblical prophets. You know, when the Jewish rabbinical tradition gathered together scrolls, and they said this scroll was from so and so, this scroll was from the time of David and Solomon, this one was written by Enoch. Enoch wrote that, they put it in their Bible. They didn't have one book, they just had a series of scrolls they carried around. Later on they took it out, and they took out Enoch from the Christian version. No version of the Bible these days has the Book of Enoch, because the Book of Enoch also describes the sun setting and rising in portals. It describes it in portals. It's got this like big, look, when I say big, look at all this. Chapters about how the two great luminaries, their circumference is the circumference of the heaven, and the size of the circumference is both alike. So he thinks the sun and the moon are the same size. And there are 7 portions of light that are added to it more than the moon. So the sun's given 7 more portions of light, and in definite measures it transfers it till the 7th portion of the sun is exhausted. And then they set out portals of the west and make their revolution by the north and come through the eastern portals on the face of heaven. And when the moon rises 1/14th part in the heaven, on the 14th day she accomplishes her light, and 15 parts of light are transferred to her until the 15th day when her light is accomplished. So it's just fucking bullshit and rubbish. He's gone out to the woods, he's gone out in the chuffing desert, he's come back with a load of rubbish, and some of it people go, oh, the angels and devils, and oh, sound like a prophet. And at the time they didn't know how the sun and the moon was going in their little part of the world. They didn't, you know, whoever he was talking to didn't really know what the sun was, so they believed that it's set in portals and rose from portals, and that God gave it 12 parts of light, and like, it's just fucking rubbish. And he says the angel Uriel showed him how the Lord set the luminaries in the heaven, and that they go in these portals. So if you want to take Enoch on board, you can, but it's fucking rubbish. It's the gibberish of a madman. Enoch says that he was shown it on heavenly tablets. He's one of these that was shown it on tablets, but he didn't finish taking the tablets, did he? Because he's still loopy. He wasn't given the tablets, he just came back and told us. So it's one of them. If you want to believe that, you know, I've got a fucking golden donkey to sell you. Come on. It's just like if you read, honestly, anyone of a sound mind and body, read through Enoch and then tell me you believe anything that comes out of that. As long as there's chapters as long as my arm that are just full of gibberish, I'd just discard the whole lot. It certainly worked for Enoch back in the day. It helped him. I don't think it helps us today, because you know the sun doesn't set in a portal. And this moon falling behind the sun, and the sun and the stars bringing the years, and he's worked out, one of the things that Enoch does work out is that 365 days, 364 days doesn't make, like, because, you know, our calendars don't work exactly because our solar system is not exactly the Roman calendar, so we just make little adjustments, like have a leap year. Like, Enoch's worked out that something's wrong here, but he doesn't know fucking why or what's going on, so he just puts some really weird maths together. Enoch don't know what's going on. Yeah, so we can't say that. Can't say that either.
His legs.
So there we go. Giants are impossible. Giants are impossible. So in the first 3 minutes of this video, what she said, like, she's shown us photographs that we know are, like, she's saying that's a mud flood and that these buildings had to be dug out from the mud and they discovered railways underneath the mud. But we know that's rubbish, because you know what that looks like. That looks like constructing railways. And I've showed you this before as well. I'm going to repeat myself quickly, but residents, new houses, mud road. What you find is that when they build new houses in the UK, I mean, I'm pretty certain of this, you'll be able to see this in your local area because there'll be some construction at some point. I'm trying to find a big picture. There you go. I used this picture before. They built all the new houses. They haven't finished the road. And that's because they use big diggers and things to build the houses, and then they've got to do the pipe work under the road. They've got to lay the manhole covers in concrete, and then they put the road in. Look, they've dug up the previous road here. Bit of tarmac chunks there as part of this big, you know, this would have been a place of land, and the first thing they do is they dig up everything and they start building foundations. So here we are proving that in modern day construction, you start with the buildings, you end with the road. So we know that what she's showing us on her video is basically the same thing, just a black and white photo. So it seems silly. Enoch on the Angels, not impossible. We have the skeletons. Well, Enoch, you could have giant skeletons, yeah? But Enoch's description of why is strange and not based on any scientific fact. And as we just saw, he's also a man that makes lots and lots of spurious claims. Enoch thinks the sun goes in a portal. So it's less like let's say I dug up a giant bone and it could be a giant skeleton. Why would I then believe Enoch is correct? Why would I jump to Nephilims and you know, I don't, saying you combine two things, that's fine. Like, you know, we don't disagree and have rows here, do we? We just like talk about ideas, so that's all good. But like, I still think Enoch's not, like, it's up to you, but I still think Enoch's not credible. That's the word, credible, because say 70% of what he wrote in his book is just fucking rubbish, gibberish, and then the other 30% is like utilizing, like, he's seen. Back then, you could use religion to manipulate people, and Enoch's gone out in the desert and come back a prophet with a set of rules and guidance, and he's the big prophet. So, talking a 9-foot Goliath that may have existed. Yeah, okay, what I would say is it's possible, as well, I would say it's possible that humans get out of control sometimes. Like this chuffer. You know, it's possible, and we do have, not Nephilim, but Neanderthal blood in us, Neanderthal DNA, so that's totally possible. Andre the Giant, you know, we've all seen Andre the fucking Giant. If you look into his tragic real life story, it's full of medical problems, isn't it? It's full of medical problems, but he was a great big chuffer, like 9 foot, yeah. Like, you will get a few of them. They'll be few and far between, and evolution will weed them out because those genes will not be successful. But they'll still pop up every now and then, and they probably don't live to a great old age. But like, it would be more likely for me to say we found a big skeleton. We found a big skeleton. There was a one-off. There was a, you know, this guy had a problem with his growth hormones, so, you know, it might be something to do with that. A 9-foot Viking burial was uncovered in the UK. Yeah, 9 foot. 9 foot. That sounds fair enough. I know some people who are pretty tall. Like, how tall was Andre the Giant? Like, how tall was Andre the Giant? I mean, you can even, I don't know if the Vikings were doing this, but you can even, I don't know what meters and feet are, so hang on. Meters to feet. You can even stretch bones. You know, Andre was 7.5 foot, so we're still lacking a few feet there, aren't we? But you can stretch bones, you can put people on the rack, you can make them tall. Like, I imagine as well, check this out, if someone like Andre had been born in Viking times, they'd have been considered to be quite the boon, quite the prize, wouldn't they? Let's see if we can find a 9-foot person. You know, to the local people, the tallest man ever was 9 foot tall. So, yeah, absolutely we'll accept that you get tall people.
Good medical more.
What they would have been useful for is picking things off high things, doing physical work.
Robert.
He obviously looks a bit bigger there because I bet the man sat next to him is a bit short.
Pershing Wadlow was born on February 22, 1918, and was the tallest man.
And again, like, those shoes look small, but they're on heels, so they're making their foot look smaller with the shoe. So it's not a fair comparison, that, but yeah.
And in recorded history.
They're nice shoes, they are.
Also known as the Alton Giant and the Giant of Illinois, he was an American who became famous as the tallest person ever in human recorded history, for whom...
So there you go, you know, absolutely we get tall people, but does that mean we are a giant race of Nephilim? No. So this is evidence on the other side, isn't it? It's evidence on the other side. Like, they would have, back then in Viking times, they'd have been like, this is a great chuffer, this is our fine warrior, let's give them a warrior's burial. You know, it'd have been great, they'd have loved him, but they wouldn't have lived long. Their genes would probably not have been passed on. Their successive generations would not have had the same success. Like, if you have abnormal growth, it might mean you become a giant, or it might mean you have other problems. So maybe their genes wouldn't have continued to persist, and like, we still have it today. So I think it's okay, isn't it, to have a giant like that, because that's proof that it's not giant race of humans. What it's proof of is you get abnormalities, like Shaq. No one thinks because Shaq we are Nephilim, but this guy's even bigger than Shaq. Look at that. He'd have been recruited by the army. Yeah, exactly. Like, there'd have been kings and... You know, they'd have been seen as a great person. They might have even, get this, they might have even started stories. You know, stories. Vikings telling stories. I went over to the Viking. I heard that someone went over to the Viking lands and they're giants over there. They've seen a giant. What? A real giant? Yeah, they saw a real giant out there. He was 50 foot tall. You know, they embellish. He was 12 foot tall. He was like, you know what I mean? And back then you didn't have the internet, so you couldn't verify anything. You just start telling stories. Don't you? You just start telling stories. Rudy and the Dogs is saying he was huge. Look at that. Robert Ludlow. Is this Robert? This is Robert Wadlow. This might be the same guy. But yeah, so it's not. I think what that proves to us is it's the same guy. I think they just got his name wrong on the internet there, on YouTube. I think what it proves to us is that yes, you get giant abnormalities, but if that evidence, you see what we're saying here is that Michelle Gibson found a skeleton, right? She's seen some evidence of a giant, like one big foot made of stone or something. She's seen, if like, you could have, like, how many do you need in each culture? You could have 10, 20, 30, 50 littered throughout history of these humans. I don't know, you tell me about what you think of statistics and how often you could get. There's the Norfolk giant, a UK giant, yeah, so you'll have them in all different cultures, so you'll get this evidence of these giant people all through history. Age 22, was in pain a lot of time, yeah, he was in pain a lot of time, that's true. You get these physical problems, so you'll get this repeating story in history of this giant, this culture. Like, it wouldn't happen all the time. So, over in Arabia we saw a giant and they've got giants, so here be giants, and people would spin stories and they wouldn't be able to, you know, they wouldn't be able to quantify or categorize things. Now we've got the evidence. What it shows us is we are not a nation of giants. So even if you find 1, 2, 10, whatever, skeletons of giants, evidence of giant, anyone up to about 9 foot, we'll say. I think beyond 9 or 10 foot it gets a bit excessive, but anyone up to the height of that, skeletal bones, they would need to be evidence of Nephilim or a giant race. As we saw, they would need to be really thick. You wouldn't assume they were human bones. You wouldn't assume they were giant bones. You'd assume they were elephant bones or something, because of the size of them. They're, not just the length and the shape, but they'd have to abnormally be scaled to they said the legs would break, didn't they? So your legs would have to be thicker. So you'd look at this big thick bone and you'd say this is probably an elephant bone or a cow bone. You wouldn't think of it as a human bone because the shape would have changed, not just the density and stuff. So there's that. But we have giants in our current system of a way, don't we? So what I'm saying is, just because there are abnormalities doesn't mean we are all giants. I think that's a fair comment, and I think it then falls on people like Michelle Gibson to prove to us there was an entire race, not just one or two, not just somebody had a big chair once, or they fashioned a big doorway. And back in the day they used to fashion big doorways for other reasons, like you wouldn't have been able to get your furniture in and out. I don't know, there was a fashion for it. Like, bottom line, everything would have been big. Everything. These gravestones would have been giant sized. The graves would have been giant. Like everything, you'd be finding giant cutlery, giant. We'd have made our entire civilization giant. Like, we would feel like dwarves. Like, we'd feel like small people. We would be doing archaeology, and we'd feel like we are the small people because everything we find is giant. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like there was consistency and a few anomalies, I think. I think I've covered that then. I'm happy I've covered giants for an hour. I'm going to go on with her video a little bit, and then we'll look at a bit more Martin. And then I think I'll open it up to throwing me off course if you want. And they have found several giants found together, not just one-offs. Yeah.
Dublin?
Yeah, you like as I would agree, if this is genetic, you might have brothers and sisters. You might have some kids. You might pass on those same genetic abnormalities to them. But like one or two or several is not like a race. It's not like, you know how the human race is across the world and we've got all this. I mean, you had pygmy tribes, didn't you? You had pygmy tribes, so you might get, slightly bigger tribe. I don't know. And also, you say they have. I don't know if they have. I don't know that they have found. Like, when I say several, I mean like you know how we look back in archaeological record and like look at the Egyptian civilization, for example, and we generalize about the Egyptians. We don't generalize that they were all 10 foot tall. Like, you'd need an entire group to be 10 foot tall, all of their stuff to be big. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't just be the find a few bones. It would be, we found like every history culture that we do the archaeology on. Patagonia, land of the giants. Okay, I'll have a look at that. A race of humans rumoured to be living in Patagonia, described by early European accounts. So again, this is a fanciful illustration. I would warrant that you might have either got a couple of abnormalities and they were seen by the, I'll just call them Europeans in the 1800s, and their stories got back and maybe got embellished. Or you could even scare off neighbouring tribes by sitting someone on their shoulders. This guy's got a stick. This person appears to have a stick. So I would say it's more like those abnormalities, and they might have been cherished in their society and they might have passed on those genes. Maybe not. One day we suddenly saw a naked man of giant stature on the shore of the port, dancing, singing and throwing dust. He sent one of our men to the giant so he might perform the same actions as a sign of peace. Having done that, the man led the giant to an inlet where the captain was waiting. So they talked to this big person. But back then, 9 foot. The Patagonians were 6'6". They were very tall, but no means giants. He'd seen a tribe of 9 foot tall natives in Patagonia. However, when a newly edited revised account of the voyage came out, they were recorded as being 6'6". So it seems like Commander John Byron just over-egged the pudding a bit and said they were 9 foot, but they weren't. That's what it seems like. But it's quite possible that between 6 foot and 9 foot, around about that, you might have a tribe. Like, we've had pygmy tribes, very short people, yeah. So it's possible. But again, going back to what we were saying about basic human physiology, that's about your limit. You're not going to have like a race of giants. Like their legs were not particularly wide, their hearts were not particularly strong, they probably lived about 20 to 30 years. They probably weren't as successful a culture. Like they had a genetic, what we would now call deformity, inbuilt into their DNA, which never got ironed out through mixing of DNA, because they're a smaller, localized people. So it's basically like inbreeding. It's a bit like how we get dogs these days, you know, Great Danes, variety of size of dogs. I want just one of these pictures that shows different sizes of dogs. Like we bred dogs to, it's an awful range of, it's an awful picture. Can't they? Why doesn't the internet just show me what I want quickly like it does for other people? I just want different sized dogs in a range like that, for example. They're all just the same fucking breed, you idiots. I want like from Great Dane. That's it. You know what I'm saying anyway, yeah. Like you can do this with DNA, but there's a limit. There's an upper limit, and those Patagonian tribes that we were just describing are on that upper limit. So it's not. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes, I'll agree with that. Patagonian tribes. We would say they were giants, and when they discovered them back in the 1800s while they were sailing their ships around, they came back and said, we found a land of giants. And the cultural trend and the conversation that was had was they found a land of giants, and it's exciting, and it's Gulliver's Travels, and ideas get thrown up and people follow on with ideas. But the reality was they're probably about 7 foot max, and you know, the fanciful ideas weren't really accurate, were a bit of a flight of fancy. So I'll go with yes, Patagonia, yes. But I would say, you know, that's just breeding the dog spectrum, yeah. And that's what was happening there, though, because when you get these tribes like Patagonia, maps, let's have maps. Why wouldn't it take me to Patagonia, for Christ's sake? Patagonia, Manchester. Patagonia's a shop or something, apparently. Can you not just take me into... It's taking me to the sea here. What I'm trying to show you is that they are, like, cut off from the rest of... Fucking internet. What we know of tribes like this, Patagonian tribes cut off. What we know about these sort of tribes is that they are cut off. Like the reason they develop as they develop is because they're sort of cut off and sectioned away from the rest of society. They often were in their history, often in more like these indigenous tribes, often in more difficult to reach places. Patagonia itself being South America, some of it mountainous, some of it rainforest. So they develop like closed off. So those gene patterns, those DNA patterns, like I mean, we should also talk about pygmies, shouldn't we? Like the world's shortest people, because those genes kept being spread and repeated and spread. It's like natural selection, not through evolutionary choice, but through human decision. I fancy that I like the short people. The short people are attractive. Let's have sex with the short people. And then the short people have more babies, and then they're shorter babies, and then shortness becomes a like phenomenon. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like you could also have other genetic phenomena come through that way. Or it might not be that I fancy the short people, they're sexy. It might be that the shorter people also have some kind of disease resistance, or maybe increased intelligence, or some other feature that means they survive longer through like this is how giraffes get long necks. This is how, you know, elephants become like all the animals, and we are an animal, develop through this DNA process of evolution. And so if you're trapped off up the hills, up the mountains in Patagonia, and you haven't got so many other DNA sources coming in, and like I said, you you have some reverence, or what would you say? You see being big as a positive thing. So you have children with the big people. Like, you could develop a tribe of anything you want. If you want, we could we could say for the next 200 years, humans are only to have sex with people with large ears. We want the biggest ears possible. Big ears is attractive. Put it on the front of all the magazines. Having big ears is what we want. And you would see that in 200 years, humans would have bigger ears generally, because more people had sex with people with big ears, and they had more big-eared babies. Now, if you said small ears was disgusting, I can't stand small ears. I've got quite small ears. I can't stand them. They're disgusting. Then all of a sudden, do you know what I'm saying? It'd be a genetic thing. So I would agree with what you're saying about these groups, but I would disagree with the reasoning for why they are like they are. I think it's not some secret history of giants, a giant race that got wiped out, that lived on the earth before us. I think it's pockets of humanity being pushed to extremes through both genetic and social factors. And I think the reason I'd say it is because we've got proof of it happening in other ways. So pygmies, they're not giants, but they're evidence of what I've just described happens. And it would seem like Patagonian giants, it would seem to me that, of a similar description, it seems like it would suit a similar description, wouldn't it? They're a very different group of people from a very different part of the world. They've been evolving in a closed ecosystem for a long time, and they've evolved differently. And it's not hugely different. It's not like, they didn't conquer the world and they didn't have spaceships. It's just they were generally a bit taller and a bit taller, really. I'm happy to believe that genetics, evolution, the way we see the world today through scientific means, and the way we can predict, because also you can predict, can't you? For example, genetic predictions. So now we've worked out about genetics. We can predict what might happen in the future. So an example would be whether your child is going to have a disability or not can be discovered in advance. I want to be careful about what I'm saying here, because this is moving into it could be moving into a eugenics sort of state, couldn't it? But bottom line is, we can, like type 2 diabetes here, for example, we can predict. So we use this theory, these ideas today in technology, in human medicine. So we use them. So I'm happier to say those ideas are what is going on there. I'm happy with that. You're in a bit of a chat. There be giants still is what you said. Yeah, like, you see, the thing is, with these conspiracy theories, not these conspiracy, with conspiracy or indoctrination or cognitive dissonance, like you say, I think it is part that you can take an idea and spin it out of control. A bit like, I described it earlier. If you saw that 9-foot Viking for real waving his sword and came back and lived to tell the tale, if you were a Celt and that 9-foot Viking marauded through your village burning the buildings, and you lived to tell the tale, you would go and tell the tale, and you would say he was 10 foot or 12 foot. Like, you'd be fucking... there would become folk tales of a race of giants that came and demolished the villages because they didn't have the internet. And there are folk tales of all sorts of things, aren't there, that came up with legitimate, reasonable source material but got spun out of control. Folk tales with real back stories. I'm pretty sure, like, right, so Cinderella, it says here, was Brothers Grimm. Hansel and Gretel, no, they're just talking about the original origins of these stories. They're not talking, because the Disney ones are sanitized. That's not what they're talking about. Here we are, though. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Just checking this right. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is based on the tragic life. Disagree and exit, thank you. It's based on the tragic life of Margaret von Waldeck, a 16th century Bavarian noblewoman. I didn't know this. Margaret grew up in Bad Wildungen, where her brother used small children to work in his copper mine. Severely deformed because of the physical labour mining required, they were despairingly referred to as dwarves. They probably had hunchbacks and stuff. The poison apple is also rooted in fact. An old man would offer tainted fruits to the workers, and other children believed stole from him. Margaret's stepmother, despising her, sent the beauty to the Brussels court to get rid of her. There, Prince Philip of Spain became her steamy lover. His father, the King of Spain, opposed the romance, dispatched Spanish agents to murder Margaret. They surreptitiously poisoned her. So those ideas all went in together and became a story that ends up getting told. And we forget. We don't even know about Margaret von Waldeck. We don't know that these people were forced to work in mines. But we have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We have a story. And that's even in the modern world. So imagine what was going on back then when it was folk tales around the campfires. You know? How traditions get passed down and ideas get passed on. Across ye land and sea, here be giants. Yeah. You know, they thought that shit. Now I think, yes, you get 9-foot people. So I'm saying, yes, there were 9-foot people. They were biological anomalies. Yes, there are pockets of tribes in Patagonia that bore out this genetic abnormality as a feature of their culture due to a more constricted genetic gene pool. But no, there was not a race of giants that ran the world that were an entire race. And we're talking, you know, big numbers now, over the hundreds, going around doing stuff, because, you know, we're talking big chairs, we're talking big cutlery, we're talking big chuffing television controls, we're talking big everything, you know, we're talking big pairs of glasses, we're talking big, and no, they were not that. And there's a limit, I'm saying there's a limit to how big any human physiology can get without becoming non-human, to the point that when you dig it up, you would not assume it was a human. You would assume it was an elephant bone. So the idea that someone's dug up a giant bone and they say that's a giant human bone, either they've dug up a giant bone that's really so thick it could be an elephant bone, in which case people would say it's not a human bone, it's an elephant bone. No one would assume it's human. Or they've dug up what looks in the same proportions as a human bone, but is very big, in which case it could be this, but you haven't got a whole race of them. So I'm saying yes to the, you know, it's good, isn't it? Because this is what I was saying, yeah, is that you can take a basic point and you can spin out a big story out of it, and then that conjecture, and like, we've got so many of those stories in us. We're at a really weird place in our history, you know. Do you know what? We're at a really weird place in our history because we are. Let me show you that blip on the timeline thing. You know the blip on the timeline. You know, if my arm, you know, if I reach out my arm, yeah, right, and this is human history. This is me, the human history, the whole of human history, my arm. Let's say the tip of my nose is the Big Bang, right? And then, not just human history, everything since the Big Bang, the formation of the Earth happens around my shoulder somewhere. Then you've got, like, you know, the changing of the atmosphere. It all goes on. You've got evolution. You've got dinosaurs probably occur somewhere near my thumb. Yeah, you got I don't know, like, you can't see my hand properly because of the green screen, but I reach out my hand, that's the whole of human history. I could take a nail file, and I did cut my nails today, so I could shave my nails like that with a nail file. Just do that. And that's all of humanity, all of our history gone. All of everything we recorded, everything we've ever done, from apes coming out of Africa to talking on the internet today. That's the length of human history. I can shave us off with a nail file. Humans are a blip on the timeline. Timeline of universe, humans, and I don't know, I just put that, try and, like, I just want to see an image of it. I think I could, you know, show you an image of how long everything's been going on, and you know, when we got going. That's like, we're talking about millions and millions of years, aren't we? So it probably is hard to see on a line chart. The actual hello Snips, the actual, like, you know, on the very end there's dinosaurs. Yeah, and then like just a little bit further on than that, like we're talking like on this, to this scale, we're talking like you couldn't even see it with your eyes. It's shaves of millimeters we appear. But let me just get that fuzzy fox so you can see it better. Like we just appear there. Like you'd shave us off with a nail file, yeah? So you've had all this history and you can just shave us off with a nail file. I forgot what my point was there as well. Try to read through your chat to try and catch up. Because there's a lot of different ideas going off in chat here, so I'm trying to just pick on bits and keep it rolling, but... so I was about here. Talked about the stuff. I'm not going to bring up your like conversation and say it on stream because it's your business, but that's okay. It's good to talk to each other on conversation. That's fine. So I forgot what my point was now. But we had a long time before we got here. That wasn't my point. It's a bit weird. I could probably go back on my own stream and watch it, actually, couldn't I? I can watch myself. Hang on. Humans are a blip on the timeline. Why was I saying that? All of everything we recorded. Yeah, you got I don't know, like on the timeline. You know, if my arm in the same proportions as a human bone, but is very big, in which case it could be this, but you haven't got a whole race of them. So I'm saying yes to the, you know, it's good, isn't it? Because this is what I was saying, yeah, is that you can take a basic point and you can spin out a big story out of it, and then that conjecture, and like we've got so many of those stories in us. We're at a really weird place in our history, you know. That's it. We're at a really weird place in our history. So what I was saying is that we've not been going that long. Yeah, we're a blip on the timeline. We're the end of your nails. You hold out your arm, your nose is the big bang, the end of your nails. I've just do that and we're gone. So we've not been going that long, and so much has happened since we've been here. That to us is so much, because it's all on our perspective. You know, you see the world through a human perspective at our scale. So it's kind of hard to understand these bigger concepts like billions of years, isn't it? Because we can't, like, you're not even going to be here for like the whole of humanity is the fingernail, is the scuff off the fingernail. Me individually, I'm not even going to be here for the, like, you can't even measure how, like, I'm just so tiny, insignificant. Like, so we've come such a long way in such a short time. And we have no way of perceiving how far we're going to go. Like the things that they thought we were going to be doing today. Do you remember back in the day they thought they were going to have a computer in every village? A computer in every town. Options. Reject all. So I didn't know I'd be doing this every time I open a website. Reject all. Save and exit. I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. Thomas Watson, president of IBM, 1943. President of IBM, 1943. I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. Television won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. Daryl Zanuck, executive at 20th Century Fox, 1946. Didn't think telly would take off. Nuclear-powered vacuum cleaners will probably be a reality within 10 years. Alex Lewitt, president of the Lewitt Vacuum Company, 1955, assumed that we'd have nuclear radioactive vacuum cleaners because he didn't realise that we would be unlikely to want to radiate ourselves. There's no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. 1977, Ken Olsen, founder of Digital Equipment Corporation. Computers are great, big, huge, great thing, big things. They thought they'd have one in every village and that you go and have a go on it. You wouldn't want it in your own home. Almost all of the many predictions now being made about 1996 hinge on the internet's continuing exponential growth. But I predict the internet will go spectacularly supernova in 1996 and will collapse. Robert Metcalfe, founder of 3Com, 1995. Apple is already dead, 1997. 2 years from now, spam will be solved. Bill Gates, 2004. They don't know. They don't know. And they're right in the mix. They thought telly was going to fail. Like, they ain't got a fucking clue how far we're going to go. A computer, maybe 5 computers in the world. 1 in every town. A phone in every village. Like, they're even on the tech and they don't know. Imagine how far it's going to go. You know, imagine how far it's going to go. We're going to go so far, we haven't got a fucking clue. And hi Darren, good to see you back. I'm saying that I'm making a general point here about humanity being on the arm of time. Big Bang is my nose. My fingernails are humanity. And if you just scrape a nail file across my fingers, we are wiped out. All of our history. We haven't been here for that long, and we're at a really interesting point in our development where we can see back and say, look, what happened back then was silly, archaic. We didn't know what we were talking about. We thought fucking this and that. We thought, I was going to say the earth was flat, but in today's context, it's not a good analogy, not a good example. But, you know, think of something they used to think that we now don't think. There's lots of things. You do not poo in a hole in the garden. You do not keep your food cool in a box outside. You understand about medicines, and you have computer technology, and like, oh, there's so much coming as well. There's so much coming, yeah, that we can't understand it. Can you explain to me how long a billion years is in a concept I can really get? No, because I can't really get it. I've been waiting for the bus for half an hour. Now times that by, like, what? I can't fit the number in my head. You can't write it on the blackboard. It's too big. I can't fit it. I'm a human. I'm at this scale. There's some things I can't really get into my head. And then we were making these ideas about the future now, and we were wrong. You know, a computer in every village. We have got no idea. So then we're at a really interesting point in our evolution, in our society, in our technological and social and mental evolution, because we think we're pretty smart. You know, I've gobbed on the microphone then. We think we're pretty smart. We think we're pretty up there and we know a lot of stuff, but we've got a long way to go, and we will look back on us today and think, God, some of the things we used to think and do. The way we look back on Victorians, the way we look back on Elizabethans, the way you look back on Romans, some of the things we used to think and do, eh? And I think some of these ideas that we're throwing around now and juggling about now, some of these conspiracy ideas fall into this realm of, I said realm, then there's a mistake, fall into this area of our ability to spin a story, to get a bit confused, to not know enough about the history, to not know enough because we're not in the future yet, to be on the precipice of working with genetics, to be, you know, you could not have had a conversation about giants in the 70s in the same way as you do today, because you didn't know about the human genome. They couldn't explain it in the same way, and that was the fucking 70s. You know, there were things that we've, like, this rate of discovery will keep pushing on. I personally think that some of these stranger ideas, like the Tartaria things, will not even be possible to be conjecture in the future, because we'll have much more definitive answers. But right now, you know, think about it, we're not that advanced really. So these funny ideas still go around. We're at this really weird point where you can still believe, like, you can still walk around in the street today and believe in something so archaic as, I don't know, like ghosts, or, you know, something that they had no answer for back then. Like germs are a good example. I mean, vaccines I don't really want to bring up because of all the politics that goes on with it today, and the new vaccines that they brought out are different to the simple concept of vaccination that, you know, Louis Pasteur and people like that were talking about. But it was Louis Pasteur, wasn't it? Let me get that right, because it might have been, Louis Pasteur might have been antibiotics and not vaccinations. I think Pasteur, It was yeah, it was, yeah. Louis Pasteur discovered that if you take a small part of the smallpox virus and then give it to somebody and they fight it off. The bacteria, he grew cultures of chicken cholera that lost their pathogenicity, that couldn't make you sick, that wouldn't interfere with your system, and then he gave it to people, inoculated the chickens, sorry, chickens, not people, demonstrated they were resistant to the fully virulent strain, so developed immunization through vaccination. So before that, how are these things working? We don't know. When he does it, he doesn't know exactly how it's working. He can't tell you, but he knows it works. We do a lot more stuff. Nowadays, we've got fucking DNA, RNA, you know, it's a whole different conversation. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, at least they know how it works. And that's such a short time, isn't it? That's from 1870s to now. I was talking about the whole of human history only being a short time. So we've got a lot still to learn. So I think we're still with this funny point where you can look back and say, I don't understand this. They didn't understand it. This is what we've got today to explain it. And you can look forward and say, wow, some of the things we've got today really blow out of the water some of the ideas of yesterday. Totally blow it out of the water. You know, and it's strange to me then that there's lots of people that will say, oh yeah, but if you look back in history enough, you can find secret technology we didn't know about. Really? Or is it more likely that if you go forward, you'll find it? Because we're finding it, we're discovering it through ingenuity, through invention, through understanding of physics. We go forward and we make inventions. We go back and we see confusions. The Great Pyramids have been brought up in chat there. The ability to build was not a surprise. Stonemasonry had been going on for a long, long time. So I would say the Stone Age, like, imagine how long it took us to develop things. Like, we're talking about 1800s to now, the world has changed in huge ways, yeah? The Stone Age lasted from... the beginning was... Like, we've got early humans and earliest stone tools, 3.5, early humans. So 3.5, what is it? What are we going in here? What are these integers? Million years. So we had about 3.5 million years to get good at working with stone. So don't worry, we were fucking good at it. And with slave labour and a load of stone and a load of tools, you can fucking make good stone stuff. Like, I don't think it had to be super secret technology, oh, we couldn't do it today, or this and that. I've seen the videos. Don't worry, I've seen the videos. I've seen the videos about the accuracy. I've heard Graham Hancock and his chats. Do you know it's that accurate? Because Graham Hancock said it was. Do you know? Have you measured it? I don't know, man. You trust Graham Hancock to measure it for you. I can't measure it. I'll tell you for why. It's all fucking old and destroyed. It's not as it was. It's not covered in marble anymore. I can't measure it. But I tell you what good tech we had back then. We had humans. Humans are pretty fucking capable of doing stuff. So I think that, we got stone, with like incredible artists that can do 12-year-old paints realistic. Look at this. This is just a different thing, just to,
Win at work.
have a conversation, yeah? Because I'm not rowing with you. I agree with some ideas, I disagree with some, we'll talk about them. It's just a conversation.
4-year-olds are mastering the art of stick figures and shapes, but Isabella Broznikova was already sketching deep-sea wildlife.
Now at the age of 12, her art is so realistic, people question whether she did it. Nina Burton went along to meet her.
As far as art prodigies go, Isabella Broznikova, or Isabella Clever as she's known in the art world, is right up there.
It's good, isn't it?
So much so, you'd be forgiven for thinking her drawings are photos.
It's good, isn't it? Really good. I couldn't do that. To be honest, if I'd never seen anyone do that before, I'd have thought, fucking hell. Did a human even do it? Maybe it's done on a computer. Like, I'm so used to seeing art these days. I've seen a lot of pictures. I've seen a lot of drawings. I've seen a lot of artists produce drawings. The other impressive thing here is she's only 12. So she's got a skill, a talent, a flair that maybe you and I don't share. Maybe I don't have that. So to me, when I start to draw a picture, I mean, maybe she's learned some knowledge as well, some underpinning knowledge that I don't have. I've not worked with stone. I don't know. Maybe you learn these things through, you know, underpinning knowledge, and on top of that, you've got an artistic flair. And at the end of the day, she can do something that I really can't. And if I had not seen other artists over the years, if I'd not been aware of these techniques, if that was the first time I saw it, I think that's kind of, she couldn't. Some people even don't believe she did. We'll talk about the slaves and the blocks, and like, you know, we can. I don't know. I think a million people could move a block. I think they could. You think they couldn't? So that's about that. I mean, look at what this one person can do that I wouldn't believe she could do. If you told me she's going to draw me a picture of a lion, how good is it going to be on a scale of 1 to a photo? I wouldn't have put a photo as my answer, so I would have been wrong. It turns out humans can achieve some really fucking remarkable things. Some really humans can individually can achieve some really remarkable things. You put us together, and oh my god, what you can achieve. You know, and then you factor in slave labour, and you factor in like socio-political rules about what your life is for. I mean, that's just a realistic painting, but you know, realistic sculpture. Sorry for my right, but it's, you know, stonemasons are doing really good works. This is a modern sculptor, so they've got modern techniques, I suppose. But back then, like, you'd have had whatever was considered the most modern technique. Like, you can create things, man. Right, that looks bang on, Connor. I wouldn't have thought you could do that with just stone and tools and chisels. Drills. I mean, nowadays you've got drills. Back then you had drills. It's just they were hand drills. So, and you're going to say, oh, it was steel, or it was copper, it was this, or it was that. I mean, maybe underpinning knowledge that I don't have. Maybe they had. Maybe they had knowledge of other abrasives. Maybe they had knowledge of other alkalines or acids. Maybe there are other ways of working with stone. They certainly had 3 million years to work it out. So we can question the pyramids, maybe in a different... I think we should do a different episode on the pyramid specifics. It's a bit unfair because it's quite a big episode. You know, we're coming towards an end of a big conversation about giants. But that's kind of what I think about this, is that I would give humans more benefit. You know, I would say... Because, like I said, we're a bit ignorant today. We look back and say, oh, we couldn't possibly have done that. I can't do it. And we look forward and say, you know, I can't perceive the world of the future. I predict there'll be a computer in every village. Like, we're not that good at making predictions about things. We're not that good at assumptions about what can and can't be achieved. We're not that good as an individual human with our brain putting together all those concepts, like they're bigger concepts, like the amount of time. Like, we say, oh, I couldn't do it. At the same time, you wouldn't be able to build the fucking Empire State Building, or you wouldn't be able to. How on earth could humans build X, Y, Z? Well, they do, and they have. Like, all over the world, there are astonishing, let's just say, architecture. Astonishing architectures that we sort of take for granted in a way. And I know we've got modern tools and modern techniques, but, you know, how did they do that? Well, it took a bit of brain power, I'll tell you that. That's more difficult than the pyramids. We've got modern techniques to design and build it, but it's more difficult than the pyramids, right? So let's go for something astonishing, ancient architectures. And then we still get, like, I'm still astonished at, like, Petra dug out of the rock. Like, I couldn't do that. I still search for a more, I mean, even Stonehenge is impressive, isn't it? Because they took those stones from Wales. And you're saying you can't move stone around. Well, you clearly can, because it got there from Wales. And we assume that our modern techniques are the techniques they would have used. You know, we assume... I'm saying dragging around the rocks by hand, but I'm not saying necessarily, you can't lubricate them. I'm not saying you can't use air pressure. Like, you know, a hovercraft, you know how a hovercraft works? You create a cushion of air underneath something and then you can lift it on the pressure of the air. And actually, if you can create the air pressure through blowing into the air thing, then you can lift things that are actually quite heavy. And maybe you flood the area, make a canal. Like nowadays, we would move things on canals. Even when I say nowadays, you know, that the canal age is slightly gone, but, you know, we can move things on waterways. So there are other methods. I don't have to drag it along the ground, but people, ingenuity can make it work. They can make it work. Definitely. And there's another one that I've seen that's really interesting as well. You'll like this. Man moves giant blocks with tiny pebble, maybe. I've got my caps lock on now, which I don't like, but check this. This is amazing. This is really cool human ingenuity that will give you maybe a different perspective, or maybe not. I don't know. Don't care. Do care, but I find it interesting is a better way to say it.
How they did it. How they moved and stood these massive stones.
Now, there are, before we get onto this, he's moving these blocks by hand, so you will be amazed. But let me just say one other thing. I want to show you Machu Picchu and, you know, these other ideas, because there are confusions between different things around the world. Because they just showed you a sort of Stonehenge arrangement, but we're looking at the interlocking blocks as well. You know, you're looking at building pyramids. Now, we know that these blocks here in Machu Picchu that interlock like this were most likely created with a sort of rudimentary cement. And the reason we know this is because we've got evidence that they could dissolve blocks, these particular kinds of stone, with alkalines, acids. You know, you can dissolve limestone with acid rain or acidic rainwater like runoff. So you can design things like that. You can make shapes. You can create cements through dissolving of rocks. The rudimentary cements they used to make in the Stone Age included shaving rocks and mixing them with water, and then they would sort of reset. So, you know, you use cement these days. These days you would use a cement. So you could make this with a cement sort of thing. They'd be perfectly interlocking. They'd be perfectly this and that. You know, geopolymer made using bags, Rudy's saying. So there you go, that makes sense. And that makes more sense to me now, bags, because you can see that sort of slight bulging in the shapes, and that would be consistent with a sort of sewn bag shape, wouldn't it? A slight bulging of the sides. These blocks especially, the fact that they're consistently reproduced, it looks like you'd probably have a wooden frame, and you'd fill the wooden frame with this rudimentary cement. And you know, if you do that, say, 10,000 years ago, maybe it'd go really hard by now. Another reason we know that this is the case, and Graham Hancock doesn't seem to know, but another reason we know this is because they've done spectrometry or x-rays. They've done readings of the rocks where you look through the structure, and what you see is a consistent structure. You don't see fossils or imperfections or like when it's rock that's carved out of the ground from a quarry, there are things in the rock, because the rock is formed over years of sediment crushing together, whereas this is consistently the same material all the way through, and that would be borne out that it would be poured geopolymer, because you'd create that geopolymer as you're grinding down the rock, as you're grinding up or melting it with acid or whatever you're doing. You would create it, you would lose all those imperfect bits, those little pebbles, those little fossils. They'd come out of the mix, they'd be filtered out, and you'd end up with this. So there's another reason why it might be that. So what we want to be careful of is not to mix up ideas, because just because they had Machu Picchu and the pyramids don't mean there's anything to do with the two things. They might not have been doing any of these techniques in Egypt or any of the Egyptian techniques here. But what we can see from here is we've got things we find difficult to explain with traditional techniques, Western traditional techniques, and things that then can be explained with a bit of deeper exploration, a bit of a deeper dive. So it might be the same with the pyramids. It might be that our assumptions, my assumption about dragging rocks, might be completely wrong, mightn't it? But the fact that they built them with human ingenuity, I don't think is wrong. I don't think it has to be aliens or secrets, or, you know, maybe we just got up the wrong end of the street a bit, and maybe we need to go back to a different idea, maybe hovercraft technology, which you could create with, but, you know, those pumps, like you're talking about leverage. So you know how bellows work. Bellows, hovercraft, lifting blocks. Like you can create leverage. Oh, there aren't a great number of strange that this simple system. Oh, there we go. There it is. There it is. It's such a simple system, you can buy it on the internet. This is called an air wedge. They use them to open up car doors if you've had a car crash or something like that, or even just to, you know, this lifts up to 140 kilograms, yeah? And what this is it's a sealed bag and a pump. And it's got a valve on it, so you can pump air in, but the air doesn't escape. And if you've got the technology to really create a nice sealed bag with a valve, if you've got a good valve, now we're talking about stoneworking, so no one's really looking for bags and valves, and it's possible they wouldn't find them because they might not, you know, survive in the same way. Maybe they didn't consider it to be sophisticated technology that required recording. I don't know. But if today you want to lift up to 140 kilograms with just air pressure, you can do it like that. Bellows and leverage means that you can get 4 people pushing the bellows and it only goes. But think of your tyres on your car that you can push up with a bicycle pump. Hand pump your tyres on your car and lift your car. It's about leverage, and it's about air pressure, and it's about valves, and then it creates this lift. So there's one way of doing it. That's like, you can't say, oh, they couldn't do that. Of course they could. And it doesn't mean that the pyramids were built by aliens. There's that. But check this out, right? This is so this is a different idea again.
It's a scientific mystery. This man swears he's cracked. He's building his own Stonehenge in his Flint, Michigan backyard.
So bear in mind, he's using concrete blocks and he's building a Stonehenge, so it's different things mixed together here. But, you know, it's just ideas.
To prove it. Wally Wallington's not a scientist, but he knows a thing or two about moving rocks.
That's a 300.
Look at that. I can't get the quality up any better. I think this is the best quality I can. I'm trying to get it quite. Look at this that he does.
Michigan backyard to prove
he
it.
does 2 or 3 things in this
Wally
video that's
Wallington's
amazing to me.
not a scientist, but he knows a thing or two about moving rocks.
That's a 300-pound block. This is 1,600.
So he had a system of rollers. They weren't round. They were like X-shaped rollers, like this. And what happens is as the block hits and drops in, it pushes it and it moves into the next one and it pushes it. You do have to have some force to push the block, but we're talking about thousands of slaves that were definitely there. Their houses were discovered and their bones were discovered. Generations and generations of slaves definitely were there. So, you know, maybe they could just be pushing them along. Maybe use physics to your advantage. Maybe you don't have to drag the blocks. But can you carve and place and then design, you know, with those lines, those straight lines? Well, straight lines are as easy as a bit of string, mate. When the builders do a plumb line for building a wall, building plumb lines, brick. This is Brickwork 101. And, you know, I'm not being rude about brickwork because it does get complex and it is a bit of a skill. But your basic thing that you're going to learn day 1 in brickwork school is how to use a piece of string at tension to create a straight line. And then with that and some really simple geometric tools like straight edges, right angles, whatever angles you want, you know, you start to lay your foundations, your bricks, and then, like, that's it. They're still using that today because it's fucking bang perfect. A line under tension creates a straight line. You look at the stars, you've got your systems of astronomy, you draw your lines in the sand, you put out your plumb lines, you ain't going wrong. If you are, you know very quickly. They still build houses like that today with bits of string. So there's no way you're going to tell me that, oh, you can't do it, it's not possible to build the pyramids. They're still doing it today with bits of string. So I'm not going to have that. And I'm also going to say you can lift blocks with hovercraft technology. it's been like exampled. They use lifting blocks, riser blocks here. Rubber risers are not the same thing, are they? They're things you put things on, but they use sorry, I've lost my image there now for some reason. Close that. They use these pump things to lift heavy things. You can use a set of bellows and create leverage at one end using physics to force the air in. You can have valves. Valves are very rudimentary. You can create valves. You know, we've got valves in our throats that don't allow air and water to go the same way. So, you know, they'd have been able to work out valves. Wasn't there a really simple Archimedes straw? Is it Archimedes straw? Like a set of valves. No, that's Archimedes screw that I'm looking at. I was looking at one for straw. There's a set of valves in a straw, isn't there? Valves in a straw. I can't find it now, but there's a mathematical thing about valves in straws, and they make a special straw that you can only suck up. You suck up by blowing down and stuff like that. Anyway, you know, what I'm talking about there is, what is it? It's liquid pressure dynamics or something. There's like a whole school of thought, you know, there's like a whole school of physics about it. But we know we can do that. And now check out this one more. So now we can know you can roll the blocks along rollers. Then we've got one more thing now.
That's a 300-pound block.
And this should all be in an episode about pyramids, not giants, but we're doing it now anyway. So
this is 16.
I'm not saying as well, you've got all these different ideas going off in the chat, which is great. I'm not saying that it's not like, you know, it could be all these different options. What I'm saying is, here are some more options, and it's strange to me that when you get, I'm going to use Graham Hancock's name again. I know that you're not big on him. I've read it in the chat. I've seen your chat. I know you're not big on him, but you get people like that they'll do a whole book about ancient aliens or messages from the gods or whatever, because these fantasy ideas, these cool stories, these flights of fancy, you know, from our human history, we like them. They're interesting. I watch Game of Thrones. So it creates interest and mystique, and people get behind it, and you can do a talk, and no one else is doing your talk. You're the only one doing that talk. You can occupy a niche. You can sell books. You know, it's his reason for living, not just because he believes it and wants to share the message, but because he's financially involved. It's his bread and butter now, spinning these stories. He's like a storyteller. Terry Pratchett used to write books about the Discworld. He's writing books about our world, but it's still equally fantasy to me. And what's surprising is you're going to suggest that Graham Hancock or someone else will suggest Egyptian magic, or how did they possibly build the pyramids? They'll start with that. They couldn't possibly. Well, they could possibly. And before you say they couldn't possibly, we should look at all the things they could have possibly done and write them off first. Because at the moment, they could have lifted it by air pressure. They could have created canals, because the water, the floating of things on water, the blocks were big and heavy, but the canal only needs to be like 2 foot deep and have something equally like wide and floaty. Like, there are different ways of like working this out. I don't know if they could have frozen things, because I don't know about the temperature. Probably couldn't, but you know, ice could have been involved, or lubricants. You know, you can slide things on lubricants, oils, human blood, and then a bit of slave labour thrown in. You know, you've got to exhaust all these possibilities first before you can then start turning to the gods. But anyway, this guy knows the thing about moving blocks. He's got more to show you. He's got more.
Not too difficult.
He's a retired construction worker whose passion
Look at this.
is moving heavy items. His feats always draw a crowd, mostly family.
I thought he was crazy. Who cares about moving blocks around? But then when you look at the magnitude of the weights that he's moving around.
Look at that. Now, I've seen the strongmen operate. I've picked up some weights in my time. I used to work on a building site I used to be a roofing labourer for a good while, about 9 months, I suppose it was. Maybe over that. In between university and hairdressing, I was a roofing labourer. And I know how heavy that is. That's fucking heavy. And he's just spinning it around. He's got a bit of wood on it. He's using leverage, and he's using one other special technique.
It is really impressive, and he's not using any equipment or anything.
In playing with blocks, Wally thinks he's discovered how Stonehenge was moved.
This is my first Stonehenge arch I permanently put in place. It's 3 blocks. They weigh over a ton each.
He's done that one man on his own, hand done.
It's all based on a very simple technique.
I found a simple explanation for this, to move a block about the weight of a minivan, would be to place a stone on it.
He would, look at that, a little stone.
Underneath it. And once I balance on it, I can spin it.
And he can use leverage and balance to spin on the stone. Now, he's not worked it out mathematically or anything, he's just got a little stone, he's got the block on top of it. I don't know how he's got the block on top of it, to be fair, but...
Of course, with that spin, you've seen I didn't go anywhere. But I got two handles on my lever, and I could place another stone on this side. Now,
oh, wait, he can just put the stone and use his lever. Okay,
every time I spin a half rotation, on each stone, I move the block horizontally, the distance between the stones.
Now he's moved the block with those two little stones.
With my own output, I could move a 1-ton block 300 feet per hour.
Look, this is one man. Obviously, the blocks were bigger in Egypt. Yeah. But look, this is one man, and he's got a concrete floor. I'll give him that as well. There are things we need to iron out here. But is it possible... I'm not saying that they did this. I'm saying, is it possible that humans could move great big blocks by hand?
Using this technique, he's moved everything from 1-ton blocks to buildings.
He moved up to
He's out there on his own with his video camera doing this.
a pole barn at one point, a 30 by 40 pole barn that he moved 300 feet for me. And it was more or less, you know, what else can we move? And he looked at me and says, hey, can we move your barn? And I said, sure, let's, you know. Next thing you know, it was 300 feet in the other direction onto another piece of property.
It can move barns, and while he's betting, it moves Stonehenge's 25-ton rocks. But raising these giants is a whole different puzzle.
This is 19,200 pounds. Yeah, it's 128 cubic feet of concrete.
Today, Wally hopes to solve it. He'll put one of his theories to the test and try to stand this 19,200-pound block by himself.
I've tried to do this without any mechanical machinery at all. I've used mostly sticks and stones.
So you're bearing in mind that they had thousands of slaves. Like, this is leverage scaled up, yeah. Yeah. But like, we don't use these techniques today, so you don't think that it could be done. But look, he's doing it.
For my equipment, no pulleys, no hoist, no metal levers. Just try to use...
They were not slaves. Okay, we can argue about whether the socio-political, situation, if you want, but okay, human beings. What it is here is the conjecture: human beings cannot build the pyramids by hand with rudimentary tools. Can't be done. Therefore, we need to look outside the box and find a different explanation. But I'm saying that start point is unfair. Because it can be done. Doesn't matter how accurate the records show they're fed and cared for. There you go. Then, okay, fair enough. Like what I would say, slaves, because they can't choose if they're going to leave. Like they're born into a world where they work for the pharaoh and build the pyramid. Like that's what I assume. I don't know. I can't tell. I wasn't there. We can dig into it a bit deeper. But the basic premise of can you build a pyramid through human ingenuity? Through human endeavour with rudimentary tools, can you move these blocks? I mean, Stonehenge is a different conversation because they dragged them from Wales and they had horses and carts and things. But at this point, we're looking at Egypt and we're looking at people out there that definitely had rudimentary tools, knowledge of mathematics. Can you make straight lines with string? Yes. Do you still build houses today with those straight lines with string? Yes. And do you? Are you able to do geometric shapes based on the astronomy? Yes. Are you able to perfectly line it up with the stars? Yes. Are you able to create a very subtle, because it's not flat, the plane of the pyramid, it subtly indents. There's like a line down the center that it moves into. So are you able to create that very subtle geometric shape? Yes. Can you... the one thing that really is a difficulty in our brains of today, because you're asked to pick up your bags of shopping and you're like, fucking hell, that's heavy. Can you actually move these blocks without a crane?
Gravity, too, I believe, is my favorite tool. Whoop.
The first goal is getting this block 3 feet off the ground.
In order to move it up to this point, I just rock the block back and forth, adding weight to that end, and that opens a gap on this side, and just slide a board in. Then I add the weight to that end. There she goes. and slide a board in on this end.
This shoring box acts like a jack, slowly raising the block. It's 3 feet off the ground, but tomorrow is the big experiment, standing it up.
So yeah, obviously you can, and you just use really simple rudimentary tricks. So yeah, it's just leverage. It's just like the Great Pyramid is nothing rudimentary, and we cannot build accurate on that scale. Well, I'm saying we can't, you and me. If you and me went to try and build the pyramids, we're fucked. But I think they probably did, because they did. We know that they... One thing's for sure, it was built, yeah? Like, it was built. Interlocking pattern, yeah, well, you can do that. You can design that. You can get clever. You've got the time. It's all you're fucking doing. That's the height of your civilization. Like, you haven't got your Elon Musks working on rockets to the Mars. Back then, your Elon Musks are working on moving these blocks. Like, you haven't got... you know, you consider the amount of endeavour in our society that goes on in... like pushing out in all these different directions. Back then it would have been a bit more focused, because the fucking pharaoh wants his pyramid built, mate. Like, they haven't got so many technologies that they're off in so many directions, but they've got enough that they can really get down to business with it. So I think, yeah, it's not just, I agree, it's a bit more complicated than this, but you start with a simple principle, and then you've proven a simple principle, and then you can just start making it more complex. So the basic things of, can you build a giant pyramid? Yes. Can you even shape the interior chambers to your design spec? Yes. Can you design things on paper? Yeah, you had papyrus and, you know, design ideas. Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't just the pyramids they built, was it? Like, you've got a whole industry. Because in Brazil, Egyptian buildings in Pharaoh's time. It was a long time as well, so like, it wasn't just that they were building, like, they were houses, temples, like, even those slaves that we contest they're not slaves had like places to live. Like, it was a full industry of building going on, like, you know, like we have today, because everyone's got a house. Like, it wasn't just that they built, like, you know, where do you think they lived, all these people? In stone built, masoned, like, structures. Like, they weren't just sleeping in tents out in the desert, they were living there properly. Like, look, this is Alexandria, built out of stone, isn't it? Like they were definitely there doing loads of stuff, and like, we think it's easy for us to think this is I think this was more like slave quarters, little old town, curvy walls though. Look, that's interesting, isn't it? Curvy walls. Wonder why they did that. Maybe they were the toilets, I don't know, but they were certainly like interesting, and even on simple basic things. So they were doing loads of building, and it was a standard, it was an industry. And ancient Egypt timeline, we're talking about 3000 BC to 500 BC, so nearly 3,000 years is that timeline there, and they're going from 2,500 to 5. They're going for about 2,000. So you think how far we've come from zero, birth of Christ, to now. Like, think how far we've come and what we've done. Yeah, there was a fucking load of stuff getting done. They didn't do so much different stuff. They were a bit more focused. They didn't have that same range of technologies and interests, but they did have a bit of a range, you know, society, look, and they're going for all this time. So you've got to factor that in. It's hard for us to understand that. It's hard for us to internalise that idea. You know, we couldn't build the pyramids, they couldn't do this. They fucking could. They had 2,000 years to get it done. There is some question about whether they could have finished in time and this and that, and, you know, there are questions about numbers and idea, because they think they dragged the blocks along the ground and it took a long time. So maybe if they had other ways of accelerating the building, yeah, but you know, we leapt so fast, yeah, we did. We're using horses and buggies, yep, we did. So they didn't leap as far and as fast, but we assume that they just stayed at the same You know, just chiseling on blocks for 2,000 years. And at the end of the 2,000 years, they're still chiseling on blocks the same they were at the start. I think in that time, they'd have got pretty fucking good at stonemasonry. I think they'd have got pretty fucking clever at doing things with blocks. Because if one man on his own that's interested in it as a hobby can get that clever in one lifetime, yeah? And like, we don't even know, like, the thing is, our people are not bothered with this thing. Like, our clever people are thinking about how to get into space, how to do this, how to do that, aren't they? So it's not just stonemasonry, no, you're right. With one man can get that clever with that, then maybe in 2,000 years, the Egyptians, you know, in that time, they could have come up with some ideas that might have helped them build the pyramids. And it might have been forgotten to history, but the actual pyramids aren't. So at least we've got them to fall back on as evidence, because like saying they can't do it and it being there, that's another problem I have. Is you're saying like it can't be done, therefore it has to have another, like there has to be another explanation of how it can be done. Aliens or this or that or whatever. You know, it can't be done, so we have to have another explanation. But I'm saying that that's a flawed premise, because that's just looking at it and saying I don't think it can be done, but not accepting room in your mind, in your worldview, that you might be wrong on that and that it might be able to do it. I think that's the flawed premise, that it can't be done. I think another way to look at it might be to say it can be done, and the way we know it can be done is because it was done. There are the pyramids. It was done. Rather than can it or can it, what about was it or wasn't it? Yes, it was. Now we're coming from a different perspective of who did it and how. We're both asking a similar question, but I'm opening up the possibility, or leaving the possibility open, that the people that were there did it. I'm leaving that as I'm maybe falling on the side of what's more logical. Maybe it was man, but from a time before. Maybe, you know, maybe, possibly. It's certainly like, you know, the way we would look at that, if someone was from 2,000 years ago, we would call them a man from a time before, wouldn't we? But, you know, how far is a time before, are you saying? How far is a time before? Because if you live at the third intermediate period, 10,000 BCE, a man from the time before would have been someone from the Old Kingdom, yeah? Like, because that's a long time. We just say that's all the ancient Egypt. It's like, you think of it like, you know, the 70s. It's not like that. It's 2,000 years. Pre-Diluvian. I'm not buying that. I think aging techniques and stuff, I think we know pretty much in general. I think the Egyptians recorded as the pyramids were being built. I think they made record of them being built as well. So I'm probably not buying that. I'm going to say that they made record of it. This is now turned into the pyramid chuffer. Egypt. But I did say we'd field questions and allow you to go wherever you want. Egypt, record of pyramids being built. Ancient logbook documenting pyramids construction. I mean, it could be fake. But there you go. You got. I thought they would find things like this because they would have been recording it. So there you go. They found ancient, you know, in the same way as they find all this other old stuff. They reckon they found ancient records of it being constructed. The Pyramid of Giza, 2,500 BC. The logbook. Someone was in charge of a team of 200 men. They recorded the logs in Khufu's reign, saying the Great Pyramid was near completion. Much of the work was focusing on the limestone casing. Oh, I thought it was marble. It's limestone. It covered the outer surface. So that's good. Uncontrolled historian says there's zero evidence written down before the year 1000, but this looks like it. I mean, I don't know. Should I not believe this? That looks like you know. They could be making that up, but written evidence before the 1,000. Well, no, because like 0 to 1,000. Are we saying BC or AD? Like definitely 0 to 1,000 AD. We've got like lots of written stuff. Like you got Rome, so you definitely you must be talking BC because you've got Rome. So AD 0 to 1,000. We've got Rome. The Bible, the Quran. These you mean specifically for pyramids, or do you mean just generally written evidence? You think that's new chronology? Well, I guess the problem is it's about what you believe then, isn't it? Because I think that you can say like I would think that these tablets are real, and the reason I think they're real, unlike stone, certain stone things, these are made of wood. And wood can be aged with, like stone's a bit more difficult. With stone things, you have to look for geological things that were caught in the stone or around the stone, you know, whatever. But when it's wood, when it's geological, not geological, when it's organic material, you can carbon date it. Roman tablets, carbon dating. Now, I have to take for granted that carbon dating is factual and real. You know, I have to take for granted. This is just an example of one example of them that they're found in Hadrian's Wall in the UK. But you know, they're describing things in that first 100 years on the Hadrian's Wall construction. And they're written, handwritten bits of wood, tablets they're called. So I have to trust carbon dating, and they're on display at the British Museum, so you can go and look at them. We got record of them being dug up, so I don't have to argue about that. I know they were dug up because here's the picture of them working and digging them up. Like, unless they're faking it, you know, unless they're faking it and all this, there's them digging them up. Sorry, just closed the window. History. Recent history. I'm an idiot. History. Recent history. Why can I not get the page I was looking at, you chuffer? History. That one. There you go. So we know they dug these up. I'm going to say they dug them up. And then carbon dating. Like, I have to trust it. It's a scientific process. So I don't know where we go from there. Carbon dating. There are other reasons you can date things other than carbon dating, but it's the date of the organic matter from the relative proportions of the carbon isotopes, carbon-12 and carbon-14, that it contains. And this is what I was saying earlier about us being able to look forward and back at the same time in our history at the moment. And we're just on the precipice. You know, a few years ago, you couldn't do carbon dating. You know, a few years back, you couldn't do carbon dating. Now you're doing carbon dating. In the future, you might have more and more sophisticated means, but at least we can describe this through a chemical process. The ratio between them changes as radioactive carbon-14 decays and is not replaced by exchange with the atmosphere. So we can actually date things. Historians saying it's a con. I mean, this is the problem though, right? It's okay to say it's a con, but you'd have to give me some... No, I'm happier to veer on the side of all the different scientists like carbon dating, but is carbon dating real? I mean, carbon dating, I know it's in jeopardy because of fossil fuels, yeah, I've heard that before. Less accurate these days. Interestingly, creationists attack carbon dating. That's an interesting thing. So we know there's this big push in America from the evangelical church to sort of prove that God did everything and that science is bullshit. And they're putting money into discrediting it. They're saying they discredited carbon dating of freshwater mussels, and that carbon dating doesn't work for mussels because much of their carbon from the limestone of the waters they lived in. Creationists say that if it's over a certain age, it shouldn't have any measurable carbon. Radiocarbon doesn't work well on objects much older than 20,000 years because they don't have much carbon, is the answer. And it's the background radiation that they compensate for, gives us that older date. And there's less margin of error, so they're sort of agreeing in a way. Creationists say cosmic radiation is forming C14 in the atmosphere about 1/3 times faster than it's decaying. So, extrapolating back, yes, it is forming faster than it's decaying. However, the amount has not been rising steadily, as Cook maintains. Instead, it fluctuated up and down. And we know that from radiocarbon dates taken from bristlecone pines. 2 ways of dating wood from bristle pines. And there's a correlation in the 2 ways they date them, so that proves they're right. I mean, intelligent design, is that where our creator, because bear in mind, you know, I've also got a religious perspective that I don't bring to stream, so I do have a soft spot for the idea that a supernatural entity, you know, God created me. Yeah, I in that theological perspective, I think God created the framework, and it's like, you know, when you line up all the dominoes and then you knock over the first one, you only knock over the first one, but because you lined up all the dominoes, all that shit happens. I like to believe that. I like to think God, you know, was that clever that they knocked over the dominoes in such a way that this is supposed to be happening to me. That we would, evolution is the hand of the creator. Yeah, I'd like to believe that. But then we've got reasons why you could say for and against, I suppose, but in the evolution, nerve passes through artery. We've got like problems in our imperfect design, they say, is a mark of evolution, is what we expect from evolution, because like some things evolve because they're successful and other things come along with them despite being non-successful. So the laryngeal nerve of the giraffe is what we're looking for. Have you heard this one? The laryngeal nerve of the giraffe. So what happens is you've got this nerve in the neck. We have it as well. And it passes down underneath. This vagus nerve passes down underneath the aortic arch. Now, it'd be better if it didn't do that. It doesn't need to go down there. It'd be better if it was above the aortic arch. Like, if you were designing it like a motor car or whatever, you wouldn't design this fuck up in there. But because we evolved over time, and those of us that had our vagus nerves going under our aortic arches, that didn't cause us to evolve like that. That was just in there. But other factors in our evolution meant that we were more successful. That came along with it. It's a bit like, let's say, for example, you've got a blue monkey in the jungle, a blue one. Now, being blue doesn't give it any benefit. It doesn't give it any negative either. Let's say tigers can't see blue. It doesn't give it any negative. It doesn't give it any positive. Or they can, whatever. It's just a blue monkey. But that blue monkey is also a strong monkey, right? You get this genetic freak, big blue strong monkey. Oh, it does really well because it's big and strong. Oh, it has lots of kids. They all come out blue. Suddenly you've got tribes of blue monkeys, and they might say, well, blue must have been a positive characteristic then. Maybe they preferred breeding with the blue ones. No, it was they were strong, but they happen to also be blue. Like, my hair thins as I get older. I go bald, as I'm a human male. Most of us do. But it's not like a positive feature of evolution. It's just that being human, some things carry along. Like, so this vagus nerve is used as an example of that. And then they take it one step further and they say, look, in a giraffe, which evolved for different reasons, you've got the same problem, but it's much more pronounced. It's much more pronounced. This nerve has to travel all the way down its neck to come all the way back up. And it's a fuck up. And if you were designing it on paper, you'd just edit that out. You'd change that. You'd be like, oh, look, that's fucked up there. Let's snip that there and let's pop it back in at the top. Like, you wouldn't have designed that. It's a mistake. We have genetic deficiencies and inconsistencies. We're not genetically perfect. And, like, that goes back to what we were fucking saying today, wasn't it? That goes all the way back. I'm glad we got to this because that takes us all the way back now. We're not genetically perfect. We have genetic inconsistencies and deficiencies, and they cause giantism and all sorts. I mean, we know that, don't we? So I would say, and you can read this how you want, right? You can read this how you want, though. That could mean that we are imperfect, therefore the product of evolution, therefore God did not design us this way, it just happened through evolution. Or if you want, you can still say, no, God designed us this way, perfect. Oh, you've got to be careful around these words, but we're not perfect, but we are perfect, and you just see it as an imperfection, but it's not an imperfection, it's actually perfection. And that God did it for a reason, and that maybe, you know, as part of the perfect process, imperfections of course. You can argue it, can't you? Intelligent design. That's, if you want, we can do an episode on that. But I'm not gonna, you know, we've opened that box of worms right at the end of the episode, but we've done a lot. You know, you bring things up in chat. I'm having a look at them. I think that's fair, isn't it? I hope this is going well for you. Where are the monkey records written down? DNA. Our DNA is a record. You know, in Jurassic Park, DNA is a historical record I want, not the history of DNA. This one might do. This is for kids. Our DNA is like a long diary of human history, passed down from generation to generation. This diary contains many fascinating stories of our ancestors, with each new generation adding its small contribution. Using maths, stats and computers, you can uncover the stories and make sense of the small differences. So you look at the DNA, and it contains like genetic records, and those genetic records reflect things that happened in history, and then you go back and you look at the DNAs that you find throughout history. You can make up a database. It's quite complex. It's another conversation, but DNA, I'd say, like inbuilt. It's quite clever that it's inbuilt in us. Like this again, you could even argue this as part of the perfect creation. That the only thing What am I looking for now? I'm looking for Prometheus. Prometheus, which is a fantastic film by Ridley Scott. I mean, like, all the Alien films by Ridley Scott are very clever and are much more deep than are perceived on one viewing. But Prometheus and DNA, the film Prometheus, in that film, the idea is suggested that a different culture from across the stars came to our planet and poured their DNA into our system, and it became everything. It's a really cool idea, isn't it? Like, but it's this, they call these people the engineers, and they literally sacrifice them by dissolving themselves into the ocean, and that introduction of DNA is what's required. That's Alien Covenant, I think, in that film. Let's see if I can get it on YouTube. The black goo in Prometheus. There you go. This one. This is what I'm talking about. It's a cool idea. It's a cool idea. And it stems from the idea that it's so beautiful, isn't it? That the higher and further we go in science, and I'm not like some super science advocate, some super scientist, but I can see, you know, the facts on the ground, that we discover these things and they have this beautiful way of leading us back to other things that we like took for granted. It's about a genetic, the alien is a genetic modified life form that is designed for killing, but you know, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein after a dream, didn't she? At the age of 19 equals AI. Well, no, we saw that girl drawing that picture. Do you remember? 12-year-old girl. Why do I always hit caps lock? Draws realistic painting. Like, do you remember? We just saw this today. Like, she's 12 and she can paint better than you and me will ever be able. I don't know about you, maybe you're good at it. I just assume that most of us, you know, most of us are not going to get up to this standard. Maybe even our whole life. So, like, I used to go to an art society, and they would, you know, any of them were able to paint or draw like this. Wonderful, you know, wonderful stuff, and they've been doing it for a long time. So, Mary Shelley could have written a book at 19. Humans are brilliant, beautiful, remarkable things. Yeah. And so that whole Prometheus idea, talking about DNA, you know, it's come about because modern ideas feed into our stories and our cultures, and you get a film like Prometheus, but back then you wouldn't have had films. You would have had people telling stories around the campfires, and things get blurred, lines get blurred, and now we get ideas in our cultures, and we go back and we say, well, there was these stories of these giants in history, and there were stories of giants in history, and now we've got ways to explain them all, and I hope I've done a good job of explaining a load of them today. I hope I have. If you've got any further, they've detected copyright audio and video in my stream, so I don't know how they've detected that, because I haven't got any copyright audio playing, have I? But we'll leave them to it with their copyright strikes. Hopefully today we've done a good, you know, deep dive in some of these Tartarian ideas. I keep calling it Tartarian because I think it's a good I don't like the flat Earth over grouping, but I like the Tartarian. To me, it just means general conspiracy, but you can't really say these things in your titles, can you? That's odd. What was copyright? Yeah, I don't know. But I hope we've done a good episode today. I'm trying to keep these Tartarian ones going. I'm trying to keep them specific enough that we can deal with a topic, like today we did giants, but also broad enough that we can have a look at all the different channels and ideas. We didn't do There's No Place Like Home today. We've got to bring her in again, so I missed her off, which is annoying, because I'll just quickly show you what she's been up to. We looked at Martin, didn't we? But not deep dive. But there's no place like home. She's done 10 topics for the beginning truther. She's trying to get people into it. And in her community post, she's posted this, which makes me feel a bit sick inside. As a homeschool mom who's well acquainted with the history of American education. Now you smart people in chat, Uncontrolled Historian, King Snowgergelson, Roger, Darren, you smart people will know about, because you are smart people, you only get this deep into these ideas because you're smart. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that for a fact. People without much brain power who aren't doing much thinking aren't thinking as deeply as you. Yeah, so you're pretty smart. I'm going to say that. I think you'll agree. Yeah, I think you'll agree with me. You don't go around in life, being a dum-dum. You look deeply into things. You're pretty smart. So I think you know the value of education, whether you believe in westernized education in a school or at home or anywhere. I think you know the value of education. I think you understand the value of understanding physics, mathematics, all this sort of stuff. I think you probably went to a school, and I think even if you don't enjoy being at school when you were there or didn't have good memories or whatever, I think you would have learned some stuff that nowadays you bring in as your backup for your knowledge in this new field of ideas, don't you? Like, you learned a few things in school, don't you? They even use physics to describe the flat earth, theories about speed, velocity, whatever, these sort of things. So about, I think you're going to agree with me on that, aren't you? I hope you are. Well, this is something that worries me, is here. She says she's a homeschooling mom. She's very intentional about making the learning atmosphere look little like school as possible. Rather than planting ourselves around the kitchen table for 6 hours a day, well, you wouldn't want the kitchen table. That wouldn't look like school. You could be sat around the kitchen table. Listen, she's an idiot. She says she wants to make it look as little like school as possible, so she doesn't sit around the kitchen table. Well, I didn't sit around a kitchen table at school. I was in a classroom with a whiteboard and a projector and learning aids and computers. Anyway, for 6 hours a day, we choose to explore the beautiful world around us and learn from that instead. Yes, my children do mathematics, and yes, they do structured activities sometimes, but this is what most of their education looks like. And that final sentence wasn't punctuated correctly, so she's not got a full grasp of written English. Yes, comma, my children do math, comma, and yes, comma, they do structured activities sometimes, comma, but this, and I suppose emojis I don't know where you fit them in grammar structure and style, but is what most of their education looks like. So this is what their education looks like. So this chap's firing a bow and arrow. I wonder if she's taken the opportunity to use this as a teaching moment to discuss velocity, speed, what velocity is speed over time, what acceleration is. I wonder if she's taken this as a teaching moment for physics, making the child work out the speed and velocity of the arrow by recording its speed, by using a mathematical equation to then work out. I wonder if she's done that, or if they're just firing arrows. Look, please touch, dear bones. These are her children. This is a photograph of her child on the internet. She's running this controversial YouTube channel. I say controversial because it's about homeschooling, and it's about the Great Reset and mud floods, trying to bring these two things together. So you're going to be bringing a lot of eyes on these things, and they're the sort of eyes that you want looking at your children. You want having a good look at pictures of your children. This is please touch deer bones. So there you go. There's some deer bones. You've touched them. I wonder if she's taken that as a teaching moment to talk about the makeup of bones and how they're formed, to talk about the malleability of the skull when you're a child, and how these small lines, which I don't know the words for, so I'd have to look it up, but I'm not in a classroom environment, so I can't, unless I got my phone on me. Maybe I can, to work out what those lines are and how the skull fits together, the orbital bones where the eyes go. I wonder if that's what we're discussing here, or whether they're just touching some bones while you have a photo. Here they all are in the swamp. I don't know which particular feature of the curriculum. We have a national curriculum, and you might argue it's a bad thing. They're trying to indoctrinate you and teach you all to be the same. Or you might argue that a basic grasp of physics, mathematics, geography, I did Latin. You don't need to do Latin. An international language like French or, Chinese or German would also be good. I did art, biology. Sorry, I did art, design, technology. I did physical education, like PE. I did economics, sociology. I did mathematics, statistics. I did English language, English literature, biology, physics, chemistry. These were all on a timetable, and I did them at regular intervals on a timetable because it helped the teachers to impart all the knowledge within a certain amount of time, because there's like a time limit on how young you are and how that goes. It really helps to have this curriculum all written down, and like, you might not agree with me that you think that's good. I think there is a lot of important information in there. I wonder which part of that curriculum is being imparted while this photograph is taken, because I don't see the ability to teach these children much while you stood around you could be doing a bit of biology, you could be doing a bit of, looking at some plants, but then you're limited as well by whatever's in your local area. Unless you're going to take them around the world, you're not going to be able to teach them certain things that we took for granted today. We were talking about the pyramids. Now you can't take them and show them the pyramids, so you need learning aids, you need teaching aids, you need other things. They use books. Traditionally, books have been quite good for that, but without the books and the table and the internal structure, being indoors, I don't know how you're going to bring all this stuff out, and I don't know if they're going to listen to you while they're busy fucking around in the swamp. This is the Appalachian Trail, supply water to millions. So this is probably the entire education this little girl has had today, formal education, because here are some facts and figures written down. I don't know if she can read it without the benefit of an education. I don't know what's being taught to them, but it worries me, doesn't it? Here she is having a look at a leaflet on her own. She's reading a comic or something. So she's trying her best. While mom's failing her, she's trying her best. Poor girl. I think this is tantamount to child abuse, to sort of like say on the internet that this is what their education looks like, and it doesn't feature anything that looks, that is provided for you at the Appalachian Trail. It looks like a holiday to me. Their education looks like their holidays. Now, we had holidays from education. We had time on and time off. We had holidays, but I also had an education. I worry for her children. I worry for her children. I don't know how much information she has. I don't know if she's some sort of genius, because I wouldn't be able to homeschool all these different topics. I'm not that clever. I'm not that smart. I haven't got all that underpinning knowledge. So I would need some help and support to teach all these different things.
Shelley, and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Now that we are on our 6-week break, which goes from Thanksgiving to the day after New Year's, or the first Monday after New Year's, I've been encountering a lot of questions from people about how we do our breaks in homeschool, and almost trying to justify the fact that we have a 6-week break at this time of year rather than just in the summertime. So today I really wanted to just talk about how homeschool breaks really aren't breaks.
Well, they can't be, can they? Because you haven't got the time to take a break, because you've got loads. You've got to educate 4 different age groups. They're all different ages, so you've got 4 curriculums to teach at once. So I don't think you could have breaks, but she's going to try and say that, I'm teaching all the time.
Until the day after New Year's. And this gets a lot of curious looks from people who don't understand homeschooling, people who really don't understand how learning actually happens, because they are so used to just the way that we've all been told that, kids learn in school. And
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. People don't say kids learn in school. What we understand now of learning styles, the thing is, she doesn't understand it. And we're not doing her Tartaria stuff yet. I'm just giving her a bit of a kicking because I hate her. But learning styles, I don't hate her. I wish she would do better for her children. Learning styles. You have these different learning styles: visual, auditory, reading, writing, kinesthetic. So you might be more of a visual learner. You might be better at watching it done, seeing the demonstration. You might be better at being told. You might, sit there taking notes while someone describes something to you and it really goes in. You might be better at reading it and writing it down, following it out of a book, doing your own homework. Or it might be that kinesthetic, actually getting involved in the experiment, kicking the ball, swinging the pendulum, that gets it in your mind. It turns out that we're not one or the other. Most of us think we're one or the other, but we're actually a combination of all styles, aren't we? Because we're human. So what they do in schools now is to try and make sure that all those different boxes are ticked. They'll write it on the blackboard, they'll do the demonstration, you'll get the children up to take part in the demonstration, you'll do it as reading, writing, homework to see that you'll get it all. You'll get it all, these learning styles. Simple topic like that, simple thing. Imagine that now times an entire industry, times an entire lifetime learning. There's so much to education, and what you do as a teacher is you learn yourself about all these education styles, about these learning styles. You learn about how to be a good teacher. You go to teacher training, you keep up with the latest ideas, and you have all these things in your, because at school you don't have to. If I was a teacher at home, I'd have to buy a computer, I'd have to buy the textbooks, I'd have to buy at school you don't. The government buy it for you, it's all there. So you've got all this stuff and you use it to teach the kids. So, and you only have to do one subject, someone else takes up the slack with all the rest.
They can only learn in school if they're actually in school, and if they're not in school, they must not be learning anything, right?
All right, no, well that's silly again, isn't it? Because schools obviously do trips out, don't they? Do you remember being at school and going on school trips? So they do a lot of trips out. In fact, it's part of the curriculum. So no one says that you can only learn in school. No one says that unless you're in school, you can't learn. That's not the case. However, what I am saying is unless you are prepared to fill that void that you're creating by taking your child out of school, then they specifically can't learn. That you yourself personally there are not going to be able to fill that void, and you are not therefore doing a service to your children. And I suppose that means, yeah, you know, your children can't learn effectively outside of that system. Some people can. Some people are lucky enough. You might, you know, turns out until I got in the mechanics workplace, you know, I'd done that whole course on being a mechanic, and until I got on the job, I was a hairdresser for a good number of years. I know the difference between going to college and doing it in the real world. Yeah, but there were some things I couldn't learn in the real world because nobody was going to let me fuck up their hair for 2 days so I could figure it out. I had to do that on a hairdressing dummy in college and have the teachers come over and give me personal devoted time to say, no, look, you're fucking it up. In the salon, they're all busy working. So, like, I know for a fact that there are some things that you can't learn outside of school. So turn that on its head and stick it up your arse, you chuffer.
Right. So yeah, I've found myself having to almost justify the fact that my children are not going to be doing any structured schoolwork for the next 6 weeks.
But they weren't doing any structured schoolwork for the last 6 weeks.
And so I really thought that it was important to just bring up the fact that learning does not just start and stop when you are doing structured learning time in your homeschool. Learning doesn't even start and stop with kids who are in school, and unfortunately, that's how most of their parents see things. You know,
I don't know, she's talking around the subject. I'm not sure learning even starts at your house, let alone stop.
And I'm a huge advocate for self-directed learning. I talk about
self-directed learning. She's a huge advocate for it. Of course she is, because you've got 4 kids to teach, and you can't be busy with them all at the same time, so they're going to have to teach themselves.
Directed learning on my channel all the time, and the only reason that we don't do self-directed learning all the time, full time, is just because I have a larger family, and the structure that we do have with a relaxed homeschool day really does help us out. But that
so she's even admitting it. She can't even do it because too many kids. I worry for her, and this is the big worry. We will do it now. A quick bit. She's got Giants as well, and we're doing Giants, so we'll do that as well. Quick bit. We'll have a look at it. It's not her most recent. We've still got her most recent video to do, which is top tips for drafting you into the cult of Tartaria. But
when I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like
Home,
do
a quick bit.
I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's video is called Giants, Mines, and Man-Made.
I apologise to you in chat if I'm not taking all of your questions and requests right now, but you're having a good chat with each other in chat, which is cool, and it can be seen above my head. So if you've got opinions, put them in the comments below this video. If you're watching it on the video later, please bring them up. We'll have conversations about them. I'm not here to poo-poo anyone hard. I poo-poo her a bit hard. I'm not here to be a bully. I'm here to create discussions, to offer, hopefully, ways out of what I think might be a bit of a confusion, and to some people, it might not even serve them. So my biggest tip will come after we've had a look at this. My biggest tip will come after this.
Mountains. This was actually inspired.
And we'll just finish with a little bit of her conjecture about giants.
By the mountains that I live by, and you're going to see why. So what you're looking at,
because remember, this woman teaches her kids by taking them out and walking around.
Right here is a photo that I took either last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember anymore. Doesn't matter. But I had taken my kids out on a trail by a nature center near our house, and you know, we've lived here for a while, and ever since getting into the whole idea of questioning the narrative and not looking at things through those mainstream eyes that we have all been brought up on, and just knowing that things were very likely not what we've been told, I've always been looking at these mountains with suspicion.
She's always been looking at these mountains with suspicion.
Because to me, these mountains look very similar to what I would call rubble piles from mines. Now, you can't tell from this picture very well, but I can tell you that this mountain is much higher than what it looks. I would say this is a wall next to the mountain, so the cars are probably about here on the highway. So this mountain is pretty high, and what you can see
Pretty high.
is that it is just
Got all the data.
covered in
Shale,
rocks.
loose shale.
And I've actually hiked this. This is actually part of the Appalachian Trail, and I have hiked part of this. And yeah, that's really what it looks like. It just looks like a bunch of rocks.
Okay, so I'm glad that she's able to teach her children as they're walking, because it just looks like a bunch of rocks. Appalachian Trail. I've walked the Appalachian Trail in Fallout. I've been up the Appalachian Trail in Fallout. Appalachian Trail, loose shale. Where does it come from? I bet it won't tell me, but we'll see. Shale development in Central. Oh, it will. It will actually tell me. Oh, I see. I'm glad that I'm in an interior space where I've got a computer so I can find out things. Oh no, this is something else. It's about development of work.
You write born to kill on your helmet and you wear a peace button. What's that supposed to be, some kind of signal?
I think I was trying to suggest something about the duality of man, sir.
Thank you for your tippies. Thank you for your tippies. Let me get that out on the coffee. My page. It's my page. It's how you can buy me a coffee. It's a good system because I get pretty much all the money here rather than YouTube taking half and Twitch taking half, whatever. You allow me to question myself in a safe place. Thank you. That's the jig. That's the jig. So thank you. Thank you. That's a really nice contribution. That's huge. That'll go into the Words on Stream charity kitty to make sure that we can keep doing the Words on Stream for sure for the next 2 weeks. So I really do appreciate it. It's huge. It is. It's big. It is. You know, I don't want to like go on. Oh, thank you. I'm not like some e-beggar. You know, I don't sit here and go on about it. I've got the thing below me that says it. You know, I'm really grateful when it happens. I'm going to go on and tell us about shale now, but thank you. I really appreciate it. Shale is characterized by its tendency to split into thin layers. So it just like splits. It's a synonym for mud rock. Ooh, it could be a mud flood. It's a synonym for mud rock. It typically breaks apart, thin layers, splintery, composition and colour. So, you know, basically you look into geology and you find that this happens. That's what shale does. So it doesn't look, the mountain doesn't look, to the educated eye, the mountain does not look, I can bin off Andre the Giant now, can't I? And we don't know about what's in the 1800s. It doesn't look like a bunch of rocks that were piled there. It looks like a bunch of rocks that are breaking down through this organic process because these trees, their roots. Is shale the same as slate? I don't know, but I know that slate is used on roofs and I've used a lot of it, so I think it has a similar property, we'll say that. And I'm not going to become an expert on geology in the next 5 minutes, but I'll just say, let me just ask the internet, I'll ask, is shale the same as slate? Slate might be a type of shale, you see, it might be. They're sometimes used interchangeably, but the materials are not the same. Many of the items sold today for landscaping is actually shale, which is inferior to slate. I'll tell you what, I know that like Welsh slate, for example, Martin would know this, Martin Liedtke would know this. Welsh slate is prized. It's, you know, really good stuff. And I've used a lot of it on the roofs and it does work just like shale, like that breaking apart. Thank you. You often buy it in pre-cut sizes. Like when you cut it out of the landscape, they chip it and it comes out as a big sheet and then they cut it down, but you can see it's all broken on the edges because you can't get a perfect cut on those edges because it chips apart. And what we actually do on the roofs, I've done a lot of, is you have a slate hammer, and so you take a big piece of slate, you know, a uniform size that comes in with a little hole in there for the nails, and you might have to knock it down a bit, so you chip it with the hammer and you knock it down, create your own size, and then you put it on, you create your own little holes. And I've worked with a lot of slate. I used to carry great big, and like when I say big, I mean fucking great big packs of slate on my shoulder up a ladder, like not just roof tile size, but like 7 times the size of a roof tile, like A6, A2, A1 size, you know, big A1, A2, big packs of A2 slate on a ladder. I know a bit about slate. You've pinned slate tiles, there you go. And so you'll know if you've done it that they do just crumble and break apart if you're not careful. Like if you hit it wrong with the hammer, it will just break apart, won't it? So it's a geological feature. But really good slate is desired and is put on roofs. So I guess just any old shale, no. But there's a crossover. I don't know if it's just a crossover between the definition or is slate a type of shale. They are. Slate is a type of shale, but you wouldn't call it that because it's a shale type sedimentary rock composed of clay or volcanic ash through low grade regional metamorphosis. So yes, but shale's such a low grade you wouldn't, you know, because of building standards you use different words. That's what we'd say. But she wouldn't have said that. I wonder, you know, did she say that to her kids when she saw these mountains? Because I didn't even know it.
I do have another photo of it. You see, well, I actually took several while we were on the trail, and on both sides. There's mountains on both sides of the trail, one across the river.
And remember, this is question the narrative. So who's constructing the narrative? This isn't like the Jews run the world and they want us to all fucking watch the telly and shut up. Is it? It's not that, is it? It's not like Boris Johnson wants your tax money and he wants your tax money to give to his friends in the arms dealers. So, you know, they're going to warmonger until they can use your tax. It's not that. It's not question that narrative. It's, there's a mountain. It looks pretty big from here. It says on this board out in the Alapachan Trail that it's made of shale. Well, that must be bollocks. Mustn't it? That must be bollocks. They must be trying to get in your head. So it's not shale. What could it be?
And then the other ones right next to where we were walking.
Do you have to question every narrative? Like when you go to McDonald's and they give you your chicken nuggets, do you question whether they're chicken? I do. I don't fucking eat that shit. I'm vegan. So there are some things I do question, I suppose. But I don't question the mountain.
And
feels like a Zen koan, that does. It feels like a Zen thing. You know, if the mountain, if you're not around and the mountain's around, should you question it? Does it still exist? I don't. Is that mountain really there, or is it a fucking conspiracy theory? I don't know.
Yeah, so these mountains also.
Your roof needs reslating. You don't have 30 grand on sofa. That's my dad's done a reasonable life's trade out of being a roofer. There is some money going around. One of the things about roofing is that people will always need their houses' roofs repairing because they've got roofs. So that's why I became a hairdresser as well, is because like people always need the haircut. But 30 grand. Sorry, I misspoke. I wish I could give you advice on other roofing materials that are more ecological or cost effective, but I'm not an expert in that. I never got to cost the jobs. I just had to lift the tiles onto the fucking scaffold, nail them onto the roof.
Look very similar to what I would call a pile of rubble. Let me see if there's another one down here. I'll
tell you what I wouldn't do though. I wouldn't let anyone go around on a cat ladder. They have these ladders that hook on over the top of the roof. Like you have to pay extra money for the scaffold. It's all health and safety. But some people go up on the roofs with a cat ladder. They'll say to you, "Oh, I can fix that quite easy. We don't need a scaffold." And they're cowboys, and they'll go up there with a cat ladder. It's called a cat ladder because it hooks over the top of the roof, and then you can climb around on it. The problem is you're putting the weight on the roof, and if you've already got a broken slate here and there, and you're using a cat ladder to amble around on the roof, it's quite possible you might break more stuff. You don't know until you're up there how breaky you're going to make the roof. So initially it seems like a good idea. We'll just get up there and switch one tile out. I've done loads of jobs like that where I've just got on, not on fragile roofs that like a fragile old slate, you know, but up on a cat ladder. I've walked along the ridge line. Like imagine someone on top of your roof walking along the very apex. It was bungalows. I'll be honest, it was bungalows, but I wanted to go to the other end and I just walked along and it was fucking dangerous and you shouldn't be doing it, but we're roofers, mate. Roofers. So I've been up there, seen it and done it. I wouldn't fuck about with a cat ladder. It's dangerous and you'll break more stuff. If you're me, I put my foot through someone's ceiling once, so if you're me, you'll break more stuff. It cost the whole job.
So
like the entire profit on the job had to be paid out in repairing someone's ceiling. My dad was furious.
do have this picture right here that I also took, so you can see the mountain in the background covered in rubble. I'm going to keep using that word today. And this actually, I always found it interesting. There's a lot of, quote, rocks on this trail, and this one to me looks very close to a petrified log. And
this will blow your mind. Some rocks these days are petrified wood. Some of them are.
it, again, it's just one of those things that is much bigger than it looks. And
Could just
so
be a
I
rock,
wanted
though.
to share that with you here because, yeah, that really does.
Bigger than it looks. So if you had half a brain, you'd put one of your kids in the photo so you'd see how big it is. But they're off fucking running around in the swamp, messing about. You're not actually they're not with you. You're not teaching them anything.
Log to me.
You were
So
busy on your fucking
I also
Tartaria
live near
trail.
coal mines, and I have to say that the area that I live in is very mineral rich. There are zinc mines, coal mines, and there used to be slate mines under my town. So the slate quarries were actually underneath. So yeah, there's tunnels underneath our whole town, including underneath my house. There's a cave. I've done a video on
How can there be giants as well? In tunnels.
that, but I'm going to focus more on the mountains that I'm showing you now, and they are not part of the slate, at least not in my area, because
No.
again, that's underneath the ground.
But it's no surprise you have slate under the ground, because as we've just seen, they form through very similar systems, and it would seem that the more valuable, more tightly packed, more consistent, less flaky material is underground, where you would mine it out, and all this shit and shale is on these mountains just breaking off. So that really makes sense to us, because we just found out about it.
But what I'm finding is that in a lot of the areas that are mineral rich, you will find mountains that don't look like what you would typically think of as mountains unless you know, have grown up in that area. Yeah, from far away, they look like mountains for sure. And anyone would argue with you, well, that's a mountain. Well, yeah, you could say it is a mountain, but to me, it's a spoil tip. So
Well, it's not a spoil tip. We just discovered that it's the natural fragmentation of those rocks, and they form in that way. And the reason she says it doesn't look like a mountain is because she's referring to mountains that were formed by tectonic activity, and this wasn't formed by tectonic activity. So she doesn't really know half an arse about much, and it really makes me worry for her children, because isn't it child abuse? Isn't that this is their education we're talking about?
let's see what a spoil tip is.
Let's see what a spoil tip is. We know
So
what
I
fucking spoil tip is. It's a slag heap, which is another name for what people... I won't even go that far as to say that, will I? It's another name.
Whoa,
Slag heap.
that'll be Duracell.
Could have called your channel that,
Most
couldn't you? You could have called...
powerful
I'll just say
alkaline
that. You could have called your channel that instead of No Place Like Home. Slag heap. That's alright, because she mentioned it. I'm not saying rude things. Slag. Come friendly bombs and fall on slough. Slag. I can't even spell it now, look. Slag heap. Look, there's... Do you know what annoys me? What annoys me about her work more than anyone else on the internet, and she does it so consistently,
But
is
what I'm
that...
finding is that in a lot of the areas that are mineral rich, you will find mountains that don't look like what you would typically think of as mountains unless you are...
What she does...
It's a spoil tip. So let's see what a spoil tip is.
Let's see what a spoil tip is. And she goes to Google and she types it in, and the first thing that comes up, right? And then I go to Google and type it in. There's the first thing that comes up on my screen. God help those kids, man. That's the first thing that comes up on Google. But you and I both know, we will all agree that you can't even... Oh, she's not using Google. She's using DuckDuckGo. Oh, I see. That makes it better. That's fine then. She's just using the first thing that comes up on DuckDuckGo. So that's fine. Doesn't seem that reasonable to be educating people using the first thing that comes up on a less popular website designed to search the dark web that was constructed by the Navy intelligence.
So I've talked about spoil tips in, I think, at least 2 other videos that I've made. But in case you haven't seen those, we'll just go over what they are now. Over here...
God, that sounds like her doing her lessons. God, could you imagine if you were in a lesson and your mom was telling you this shit? And you were just like, no, don't be fucking stupid, Mom. Here we go.
Back when these giants existed. Genesis 6 tells us that there were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God went into the daughter of men and had children with them.
So I'm not going to go so deep into this as maybe I should today, because they're going to suggest there's 36-foot skeletons. I don't think there are, but they're suggesting it. 25-foot. Oh God, am I going to have to look at 25-foot skeletons now? The reason remember though, Google owns DuckDuckGo, so there you go. Remember though, the reason she's saying this is because it's in the Bible. She thinks that you have to find a real explanation for what it says in the Bible. And remember, she says, we did this in a previous episode. We did this in a previous episode. The Bible was just made up shit written by loads of different people. Enoch used to be in the Bible till they took it out. The Bible is translations of translations. And since you can't read ancient Aramaic, you can't tell me what it says in the original Bible. King Henry VIII changed it so he could have a divorce. King James changed it so that... No, it's just bullshit, mate. You can't base what it said literally in the Bible and say, right, now we find the evidence on the earth, click them together. No. And your little picture there of a 36-foot skeleton, I'll take the 36-foot skeleton. I use a cozier because it plants trees. 36-foot skeleton, Carthage. Where is it? We're talking about a dinosaur bone. Apparently it's a likely hoax. And remember what I said about, like, there's two ways to come at this, yeah? Oh, this is this photoshopped image. It's not even showing it me now. Why is it not showing it me? I saw it there. This one, isn't it? Showing it me there, and then it's not showing it me here. That's so weird. There's that Photoshop picture, though, isn't there, that we've seen of someone stood next to a big skull. So, what makes me laugh about it... There we are. There it is. What makes me laugh about it is we're not allowed to use photographs as evidence that we get off Google for anything in their world. Remember, you can't prove the Earth isn't round because you've used a photograph off Google. Photographs are CGI. Photographs are just CGI. That's something that gets levelled at us when we're using photographs as evidence. This way, this is actually CGI. You can see it's CGI because the man holding a shovel hasn't actually got a head of a shovel in his hand. Like, this is more CGI than... Like, there's a shadow of the skull there. And there's no shadow. The shadow of the man goes the other way. The shadows are not consistent. This man on the side, his shadow is going down towards the bottom of the screen, but the man in the pit doesn't have a shadow cast over the skull. It's CGI. So it's internet photo hoax. Simply an internet photo hoax, yeah? Like, if you fall for that, that's on you, but it's an internet photo hoax. We're saying you can't even use photographs off Google for most evidences. I've been told by Martin Liedtke. So now she's got this to prove the Bible. She'd rather live in the world of a 36-foot... Now, I said you can come at this from two ends. You look at the bones and the picture, and then you build up a picture. Or you go from the other end of what is potentially possible. And you go back and say, no, it's not possible. If you put meat on those bones, they would snap the legs. The weight of the chest and upper body and torso would snap the legs. Like straws. We saw earlier... that man who was 6 foot tall broke his own legs. We saw it was biologically impossible. The blood pressure, the size of the valves in the heart, it's not possible. So you can go backwards that way. They always throw hoaxes in to discredit the whole subject. So why is she using it? The hoax is designed to credit, not discredit, the Bible. It's come from evangelical creationists USA. It's come from this highly motivated, quite rich, financially well backed evangelical church groups of America that do the lobbying. Like, who bothers to make a hoax like that? Who wants to do it? You're saying someone to discredit people finding out real science. I'm saying it's people who want to credit the Bible. She said it herself. She said it herself. She's come from that angle herself. She said that with these mountains, like, she's decided on a conspiracy now. She's looking for the evidence. She didn't say, there's the mountain, how is it formed? She said this, look, the Bible tells us there's 36-foot people. Well, let's go out there in the world and find them. Now I found a picture on the internet. Confirmed. So I think that the evangelical people who are lobbying for creationists, because they actually teach it in American schools, don't they? Some schools, they're lobbying for it to be taught in some schools. You know, there's a whole political problem here in America with this. So I think they're the ones that are putting out that information, because I know that they're putting out that sort of bullshit because they've got money and propaganda machines doing it, because we know they're doing it because it's like actually being done in government. So anything that comes from that area, anything that's tarred with this brush, I'm going to say, nah, you're trying to prove the Bible with money. You're trying to twist the internet to make people believe the Bible with money. But like, some things in the Bible are really beautiful and really lovely, and like, you know, I follow the teachings of Jesus. I follow the idea that you should love thy neighbour and be kind to people, and yeah, absolutely. But I don't think there were 36-foot I don't think there were 36-foot like giant. I don't think that like Moses lived to 800 years old, and I don't think that like he parted the sea with his staff. Like, you know, some things I think were just stories that got taken out of hand. I don't know. Anyway, so that's where I'm saying that comes from.
6 tells us that there were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God went into the daughter of men and had children with them.
Sons of God went into the daughter of men and had children with them. That was Enoch. Don't know where she got that from.
And this was before the flood. So if you think about before the flood, there was no rain.
Tell you something else as well. 36-foot giants would have needed a lot of flooding, wouldn't they? Like, you ain't talking about something that's going to cover up my knees. 36-foot giants would need a lot of flooding.
Springs came up from the ground to water the earth. And you would have to think that there would definitely be a higher oxygen level.
Higher oxygen level's irrelevant, mate. You need a higher atmospheric pressure as well, because your blood is going to slump down into your legs unless you've got a heart the size of your fucking head. And you can't, because you're saying you're physiologically just scaled up. She should just have a look at the Andre the Giant and people like that. They can't do it.
The atmosphere.
Break your legs.
And that would create larger animals.
So we're also understanding now this woman hasn't got a fundamental grasp of biology or physics, has she? When she's doing this wonderful homeschooling, she hasn't got a proper grasp of biology or physics. Now, I know she's not the be-all and end-all of the Tartaria debate. Yeah, I actually think she's more of a target market, but we've got a funny position in the world at the moment where we can all get on the internet. So I think she's the sort of person they sell the ideas to so that she'll give them some money, whether it be the church, blind obedience, blind faith, or whether it be somebody's book they want to sell, or Martin Liedtke's new tour. I think she's buying into it, but she's also turned into someone who's selling it. And she's got a Patreon, and she talks about homeschooling, and she shares the Question the Narrative. We're going to question the narrative, 10 topics for the beginning truther, on another episode. But I just got into this as a little finishing point, and I think it's good, it's interesting, it's fun. We've run out of my calm, relaxing music, which is from Genshin Impact, which we are playing a lot of at the moment over on Twitch. So expect a lot of uploads on this channel of me playing Genshin Impact from Twitch. You know, you don't have to love it. Doesn't mean you don't want to, you know, subscribe please. Don't have to love it. We put everything on this channel that I do that's a stream. So we've also got another channel now that is clips, which is worth having a look at. If I go to my channel, and I go to channels, and I go to the clips, Ganji Cuts. On Twitch, sometimes I go on a tangent. We've been doing a few tangents here today. What I try and do now is edit the tangents out into a little Ganji Cuts, so that you can see on YouTube some of the stuff that you don't want to watch the full episode of Genshin Impact. I get it. You're not into Genshin Impact, but when I start going on about Kim Petras and her coconuts, or Brendan Schwab and his body language on a random, get it up on the old Ganji cuts so you can experience it there on YouTube without having to follow me on Twitch. Aren't I nice? Just gobbed then out. That's why we need masks. I just gobbed out by mistake. Aren't I nice? It's all extra work for me, but we're trying to maintain Clips channel, Cuts channel. So now we've got Ganji Arts, Ganji Cuts, Mental Health Monday, all this stuff. Ganji Clips is short clips. I need to, you know, put more maintenance time into that. But Ganji Cuts is worth a watch, even if you're just into the body language video there that I did on Brendan Schwab. So subscribe to that, please, as well. You know, I'm shilling for myself here. But the main thing is we have a good time. We do it regular. I'm going to be here regular. We got through the heat wave. We got through that. You make it happen in chat. Andre the Giant was over 500 pounds. His legs didn't snap. But he was barely mobile. Yeah, exactly. And he had other problems. And you might have just joined us, Enrique. But we looked at it on... we did... Oh, I looked at it today, so it should be on my history. Hang on. I'll finish with it as well, because did I close the video earlier? Where'd you find your history? Library. History. Lots of things. Is it possible to be a giant human? So we looked at this, and whilst Andre the Giant specifically didn't snap his legs all the time, this guy here, who is a giant,
keeps breaking his legs.
He does keep breaking his legs.
And there are more health issues besides. Being tall puts pressure on the heart, which has to pump blood higher. So at 2.5 metres, it seems that Sultan has already reached the limit of human size.
So there we go. 2.5 metres is about the limit. Like, you do get taller, it happens, but he's got these problems, these physiological problems, because if you want to make a giant person, what you actually have to do is you have to do this to them.
We're going to have to redesign the human body so we can stand upright without breaking our legs all the time.
You're right, born to kill on your helmet, and you wear a peace button.
We'd need much thicker legs and stronger bones to support our weight.
I think I was trying to suggest
Ears
something
like an
about the
elephant to
duality of
regulate
man,
heat.
sir.
Thank you for the tippy snippies. I'll check those in just a second. But yeah, Enrique...
And a stronger heart to pump the blood the extra
Yeah, I agree with what you're
distance
saying. I agree with what you're saying. Andre the Giant was a champion wrestler. Absolutely. He's a great example. He wasn't fucking 30 foot tall though, was he? He was like 7 foot tall. We're saying if you want to get any higher, like 8, 9, 10, over 10, anything like that, you've got problems because, I'll just reiterate, your heart has to pump the blood. Pumping through a vein, through a certain diameter, creates a pressure. That pressure is the regulatory pressure in our human body. If you relieve that pressure, your blood doesn't pump, and then you die. If you cut one of your veins open, the blood starts putting, the pressure drops. If you lower your blood pressure, it doesn't go to your brain anymore and you die. So you need to be that big, you'd have to have a lot more blood volume. Because when you make a bucket, if you make a bucket wider just by, if I do that with my bucket, my cup, and I make it wider by that much, the volume increases exponentially. I only increase the outward size by that much, but the volume gets a lot bigger inside. So now the pressure drops because your valves and your veins are all wider, so you need a lot more blood. You need fuckloads more blood, and your pump needs to be a bit bigger because it's going to pump more blood around wider blood vessels. So that's a problem. So in order for humans to do this, we'd have to be deformed to the point of not being human, to the point of basically resembling an elephant. Even our ears would need to be so big, our skin surface would need to get dramatically bigger to be able to exchange the heat, so it wouldn't work on these proportions. Here's the
giant humans are possible then.
Giant humans are possible.
To be giants,
but to be giants,
our physiology so radically that we really couldn't be considered human anymore.
Wouldn't be humans. You'd make a being that big that could deal with all these physiological problems that was physiologically different, and it wouldn't be a human. It wouldn't have a human heart, blood vessels, all that. It wouldn't have bones the way we have them. And if you found a giant bone in the ground that was from one of these beings, you wouldn't say, oh look, there's a bone from a giant human. You'd think it was an elephant or something, because it wouldn't look human. It would be really thick and wide, and so it's not physically possible that humans could be giants. It really drops you need to dilate, yeah. All you do is completely change how everyday plants grow, change the oxygen levels and the atmospheric pressure, yeah. All you have to do to completely change how plants grow is change the oxygen levels. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because that's how they've changed over the years. And that, like, since prehistoric times, we started off with that. We looked at insects that had changed size. Insects have shrunk because of the amount of oxygen. So yeah, but there are limits on this. It's not that if you just pump enough oxygen, if we had 100% oxygen in the atmosphere, we wouldn't just be huge giants, because like there are, and it's pressure as well, atmospheric pressure, and there are scientific limits on what we can achieve, what physiologically can be achieved, and if we want to go beyond them, we become something so distorted that you wouldn't recognize it as human, and you wouldn't say that's a giant, you'd say that's a different species, and you'd find these bones and you'd describe them as such. So the fact that they're describing them as giants, yeah. So it was nice to have a new chatter in right at the end there. I just repeated it. All the nitrates increase and the yeah, imagine your giant poos. Imagine the giant hole in the ground you need. Imagine the giant loo roll you'd need. Imagine the giant loo roll. Hey, imagine the giant loo roll. I got a little bit joke. I was going to blow my nose I blow my nose with this. I have a loo roll in here. I have a loo roll in here, and it's for blowing my nose on, because before stream I want to blow my nose, make sure I'm not got boogers and piggies. And someone told me I shouldn't blow my nose on loo roll. I should use tissues, you know, like proper blowing your nose tissues. And I said, why? What's wrong with loo roll? I said, it'll make your nose big, won't it? Make your nose big. Hello, can you hear me? I'm doing a joke now, so I thought I'd just do me on the screen. Shouldn't blow your nose on a loo roll because it'll make your nose big. And I said, make your nose big? What are you on about? Loo roll, I'll just use it. Loo roll is the same as tissues, it won't make my nose big. And they said, yes it will. Blowing your nose with loo roll will make your nose big and rubbing it around your nose. I said, how is that going to work? And they said, well, look at what it did with your bum. Look at what it did with your bum. So yeah, I shilled for myself. I got that across, didn't I? Our channel is an evolving, revolving carousel of content. Expect to see my Twitch stream uploads. We play Genshin Impact over there a lot at the moment. Soz. And I'll be back on stream. What day is it tomorrow? I don't even know. I'm an expert at everything. You know, 2 p.m. GMT, irregular but regular YouTube streams. Trying my hardest to be regular, consistent. Got editing to do, got all sorts of stuff. I'm going to be back tonight playing Genshin Impact on Twitch as well, because I've got Genshin Impact to get through. So yeah, don't forget to tip my waitress, Snip says. Thank you for that. Yeah, if you fancy tipping me, it's tippies@tippycoffee.ganji.com, and I'll just check the tippy that Snippy sent as well. Check all these on stream, say thank yous. Says, getting my workout today. Yeah, I am, aren't I? Screaming and waving my arms. Thank you for the top tippies. That's good. That all goes in the kitty. It's absolutely a joy to be able to turn something that I enjoy and care about into, like, I'll be no bones about it. I want this to be my financial remuneration in my life, like my job. You know what I mean? But I want to build it to a point where we can take the pressure off the audience and get a sponsor. That'd be really nice as well. So, I do appreciate it. And to be honest though, I appreciate you all being here. You know, I know that everyone in the world, I certainly don't have money to be tipping all my favourite producers, but if you do and you feel comfortable doing it and you want to help produce the show, get on board. I'm really grateful. So Enrique's doing some calculations in chat there. I haven't got the mathematical brain at the end of a long stream to do that, I'm afraid, son. But join us again, Enrique. It's good to have you here. And we do future episodes on all different topics. And like you hopefully see, I'm not trying to say to anyone, no, you're fucking wrong and you're an idiot. Although to that woman I did a little bit, didn't I? A little bit to that woman. But I'm hopefully trying to open up a wide area of conversation so that anyone can feel comfortable here to talk, and that we don't poo-poo anyone and call each other names. Because we're all just humans and we're all just getting ideas, and we were recently evolved from apes, and so the fact that we're doing any of this is quite remarkable. And it's easy to be confused. I get confused at the fucking supermarket trying to find my way out to the checkout. So God help me, using the internet's enough, isn't it? So I'm hopefully just trying to shine a little bit of light, hopefully the main point I like to make when dealing with all this mental health stuff, conspiracy stuff, you can see on the screen there, Mental Health Mondays, one of our channels, Ganji Cuts, one of our channels. What I like to come back to at the very end is is it mentally healthy for you? Does it serve you to be worried about giants? Giants today, the big topic. Do you get something out of knowing that there were giants? Does it help you to pay your bills? Does it help you to deal with people in day-to-day life? Or is it possibly making you worried, confused, going down a rabbit hole of the evening, on the internet all night, alienating you from people that think, oh, I don't know about that. Do you remember when so-and-so was going on about giants? Oh, don't invite them to dinner. They keep going on about conspiracies. You know, does it alienate you from your friends and family? Does it drive you into being part of a smaller group, which requires you to feed off, to support them financially? You know, I just think, overall, is it serving you? Is it helping you? Is it making your life better? On a day-to-day nuts and bolts level, mental health wise, I worry sometimes, because I know that it can, not you, not everyone, but some people can really be detrimental and can really lead them off down a funny rabbit hole and give them some funny ideas. So that's where I'm coming from. You be good, my little podcast. We don't need to be right all the time. At the end of the day, we should be correct. That's a nice way to say it, Enrique. And I tell you what, I have no desire to prove myself righter or wronger or anything. I know I've been wrong about things in the past. I know I'll continue to make mistakes. I'm human, which is why I give everyone else that benefit of that doubt as well. We're humans, and like I say, the main thing is to try and bring each other together and move forward, because subtly, I do want to point this out as well, I think there are people trying to fuck us over. They're in charge right now. Boris Johnson's fucking having a laugh while he's stealing my money. Wait till you see the next unelected Prime Minister of my country. Wait till you see what they do. Oh yeah, there are some things hiding in plain sight, alright. And so that's why I don't have time for giants, because, you know, they might be giants, but really they're just men. And most of them are bad. Chuffing Weinstein, chuffing Epstein. Like, you know, we should be dealing with some of the real things. There are kids that need feeding. You know, that's why we do words on stream. Anyway, hopefully you have a good day. Hopefully you have a good time, and we can keep doing this long into the future. Or I say long into the future. See that? My little perception of that. My long into the future is the next 20 years of my life. Like, the real long into the future is the next 500 years. 7,000 years, 10,000 years. I don't have any real perspective. I'm just an evolved monkey on a great big island in the sea. What do I know? So yeah, get it all on stream. Yeah, yeah, and I'm not afraid of. I tell you what, Enrique, I agree with you there as well. Which is, I'm not afraid, especially when we talk. Sometimes we talk about a cult. Sometimes we talk about spiritual things. I'll tell you what, I'm not afraid. On a Davenport machine, that's a CNC machine, isn't it? I'm not afraid of things because, yeah, I agree with, I don't know, you know, I can't prove, I'm not here to be a religious channel, but, you know, if there is a God and there is someone watching over me, you know, they are watching over me, and I have my strong beliefs in ethics, and they seem to overlay with those same strong beliefs in treating people right, being good to thy neighbour, loving each other. So, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, getting my golden ticket. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm not interested in the golden ticket. It could be made of cardboard. Recycle that ticket. Just let me in. Alright, anyway, you be good, my little puckosh, you be good. You're watching over me. You see, look, you say about watching over me, you're watching over me literally on stream today, so I thank you for being here. I thank all of you for being here. You be good, my little puckosh. Have a good day. And if you remember, if you can't be good, you're naughty.